Here we are, y'all. So that was fun. Wow. That was really fun getting out and seeing a world of people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, parties are fun.
Yeah.
Interesting people.
So it's such a vibe down there.
Right.
Yeah. Pride parade. I liked how we were doing that. We were commenting, as we were walking, and that's my whole experience of just being in this city. Is there's so much that I love about it and I'm drawn to it, but then also I have learned so much as well about the reality of kind of what's underneath things and the hidden agendas behind these sorts of displays. And so it's like, I allow part of myself to enjoy it and to go and connect. But I like how we did it, where we were doing that while at the same time talking about what we were seeing.
Yeah.
Talking about all these, these companies and corporations who like to align themselves behind a cause, for whether it's like virtue signaling or, some way to be framed in a particular way in the general public's mind, which with the intention, not because they're really like, pro-pride or whatever, but it's because they know if they put a rainbow up, during this month or whatever.
So if you were to say, if one was to say, well, if you need a sponsor, like in life, anytime you want to have some kind of a cause to be, upheld or whatnot, you would want to find some sponsorships, quite literally is the word for it. And from that angle, being able to land some, good companies.
Right.
Who are going to, support the good cause. Sure. And this is where it becomes interesting you bring up this topic and start at the world, because I always see it from what the almost free-floating humans underneath do, and what the order that the very humans that are creating the society want to impose onto themselves creates out of their own needs, to use a term, right? And it's when something becomes this big, it almost feels like it's inevitable that some kind of larger societal entities are going to just want to slap their mark onto it.
Well, that reminds me of that documentary, The Corporation, and I always think back to that, and it talks about how the corporation is an entity. It's a legal entity.
Right, that's right.
So you have to sue. I think what they said in the documentary was that you can't sue an individual in a limited liability corporation, whatever it is.
I remember,
you have to sue the entity itself. And so it almost takes on its own energy and its own persona. And then what the documentary goes on to say is that, okay, if we're going to treat this corporation as an entity, well, why don't we do a little psychological analysis on this entity? How would you profile someone who, when they had a choice between properly disposing of the waste that they create or throwing it in the river where it could be, affecting all kinds of humans and animals and things like that. But at the same time, if it's cheaper for them, then the corporation would often choose that second option, even though they know that they could get sued by, certain, governmental agencies who are looking to, decrease pollution and that sort of thing. But
which they can buy off as well.
Right. Or they calculate it in, right? And they're like, okay, exactly. how much is it going to cost if we get sued for dumping this in the river versus setting up a system to properly dispose of this in a way that's good for the environment. And if they calculate that it's better to dump it in the river, that's what they will do. And so when you psychologically profile someone who makes decisions like that, it's classic psychopathy. It's a lack of empathy because you are not thinking, you're thinking about yourself over everyone else. And you're not putting yourself in others' positions and realizing, hey, if I do this is going to affect them all in a very negative way. It doesn't matter because it's more important what's important for me. And that's that's the corporate shareholders, right? That's what the corporation is beholden to. So it'll always do whatever's best.
In so many words, less responsibility, a lack of responsibility. Which
only responsible to their aims and their goals, which is make money regardless, without ethical consideration. So they'll put this front on of, we are ethical, we use, recycled, bags or whatever, and they do that for the social credit. And I think this ties into what we're talking about with these like parades and things like that, where it's just like, these entities, there's nothing wrong with being gay or being proud of it or whatever, but when it starts to get co-opted, like we were talking about, like this Machiavellian sort of way of where these companies come in and they take something that exists and then they start to subvert it from the inside. That's what Machiavelli talked about in that book, The Prince. He talked about how, you find something that's already developed, like a system or structure or organization, and you put your agents in there and they work their way up. And then once they get into positions of power, they kind of camouflage themselves in, and then they start to subtly steer things into particular directions which serve their own aims. And so that's what I think we're seeing with a lot of these things, which start out with the most beautiful of intentions, celebrating diversity or openness with sexuality or these sorts of things, or having different, orientations, whatever. And then they start to be like, these companies come in and be like, oh, let's associate ourselves with them. Let's start to direct this in a way that's beneficial to us.
And the irony here, as I hear it, is the inevitable conclusion that one must make, that the only way to battle the corruption of the human, when they're trying to, even within free trade for that matter, is, in order to prevent from that from happening, that you need to have some kind of a governing system to oversee matters, right? And that's where the entire thing emerges off, that need itself, right? And so that's why I always remind myself that it's not necessarily that the entity exists, because we need to be able to fend for ourselves as much as we need to follow somebody who knows what's going on and we trust, right? Both hierarchy and one-on-one world. And for me, I always remind myself that the word Machiavellian, it comes from the description of one of the systems getting out of hand, getting too far. So it's not the idea that we have to get rid of it, but rather to just bring it down.
Well, and there's benefits to different systems, and I like this one concept that one of my mentors talked about when he talked about, we're talking about like community development, and how do you create a community that has a sort of political governing system to make sure things run smoothly, while at the same time, is inclusive of people's perspectives, right? And that's the whole, like, democracy versus tyranny, or, whatever. It's like, and...
So if someone comes and says this bottom line is going to serve us, we'll get more money, and then we could do something with it, but we need to let go of this socialist movement of yours. Right? So because it's like, at which point does the idea of, let's say, even socialism, because socialism at its core, if we're going to look at it from the total humanitarian perspective, is the tribe that we have, we all need to kind of watch for each other and kind of follow rules that we all can count on together so we can survive better.
Yeah.
That's socialism, it keeps us healthier.
Yeah, well, and this is where I was going with that, is that it's... the way that my mentor described a kind of governing system that might work well for developing a community and having it function the way you want is he would call it like, kind of like circles and lines in a sense. So the circle being, every so often you get everybody together, like town hall, council, and everyone speaks up and has an opportunity to speak on what what they think needs to happen, what's important, what they value. Funnily, now that we're talking about this, the Last of Us season 2, they actually had an example of this where this town in Jackson, Wyoming, they had this sort of governance system.
What show is this?
The Last of Us.
Oh, good.
It's a good one for sure.
Okay.
I didn't like how it ended, to be honest.
Right.
Like, I kind of it followed the video game storyline, and I'd spoil it if I explain exactly why I didn't like it. I mean,
later.
Yeah, totally. But anyway, the point was that I noticed that they, when they were making decisions, they'd have this like town council where literally they knew everyone's name and everybody had the chance to speak and tell like, hey, this is what I'm concerned with, this is how I'm feeling about things, etc. And everybody had a chance, and then at the end they would kind of vote. So I think, that's an important thing to have, is, the ability for everybody to be heard within a community or a system. But then so that's kind of like the whole socialism kind of democratic sort of way of thinking. But then once you have that, once you kind of all decide and come up with some sort of consensus about your direction, then what you can do is you can adopt some sort of temporary hierarchical systems, i.e., okay, so now that we know this is what we want to do, Joe, you're in charge of making sure that this happens. And Cindy, you're in charge of managing this. And
which means now you're responsible for a whole bunch of people over there. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's where you go from the socialist kind of everyone's equal to now all of a sudden this person is making decisions and making sure we're continuing in this direction, and everyone kind of has to listen to them when it comes to that particular thing. Right? And so then because if you stay in that whole circle where everyone just is always giving their own sort of perspectives, it's not efficient. It doesn't get things done well. So at a certain point, you need to then utilize the benefit of a hierarchy, which is why, like, the military is so efficient and so effective. It's because they create all these hierarchies, the general, the sergeant, the lieutenant, the private, and everyone
follows the order to a T.
Exactly. So now you have a whole group of people that are all following the will of the central at the top. And if you all have a similar aim, then perfect. That is going to be efficient. And look how efficient the military are as opposed to the average citizen. Those guys know how to get shit done, right? Because they have the hierarchical structure and they know who they're listening to, and they carry out, orders and things. So this could be a model for community development, and how you can manage it is to have those social circle structures where everyone gets their say. And then you build a hierarchical structure, but you build in limits. So it's like temporary, right? So you're the head of this project, this goal,
for a certain amount of time
until it's achieved.
And then somebody else gets to do it.
Exactly, until it's achieved, until we meet a certain arbitrary point in time. In which case we dissolve the hierarchy. We come back to the circle. We assess how did that go. How did everyone feel about that? Now that we've done an assessment of how that went, now what do we want to do now? And how are we going to set things up to make things go even better? Who are we going to put in charge, and how are we going to... So it's this organic, coming together in the circle and then creating the hierarchy and then acting and following that out. But you have to build in that time frame so that, again, you avoid the possibility of the tyranny that starts to happen when people get set in their positions, right? And so...
This is why an apology needs to be followed through with an adjustment in behavior. Because otherwise it's meaningless.
Okay.
And that's the coming back of the circle. I've heard in some of the native tribes, when they're married, they would come back every year and just discuss whether they want to continue.
I like that.
Or whether they want to move on and just open up. Right?
That's great.
Right?
I like that.
Right.
That's perfect. And that's kind of like touches on my whole concept of marriage, and I think why there's so much divorce these days is because it's like you're kind of forced into this situation, this promise, and there's all these social pressures and family expectations and things like that. But, you're making a promise to be with someone for the rest of your life, come hell or high water. And there can be some benefits to that, just as there are with like people who, when they stick with something for long enough, you for some people they get to this point where it's like, you work through all the crap, and now you're in that flow, and you know each other, and you can just enjoy, right?
If you work hard for the company, as well as if you work hard for the family, you can make them either flourish to a larger degree, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like a garden, you know. It's like if you put the consistent energy in to cultivate it, then it can be absolutely beautiful. But sometimes it's not the right person, and people get in situations where they don't know that, and they jump into making these promises and these vows, and then the truth of who they are get revealed over time, as will always be the case with people. You can only wear a mask for so long, and then when your true subconscious patterns start to appear, well, that's when, you know, either you find a way to work through it or you don't. And I think we're not really equipped in today's Western culture of individualism and whatnot to really stick it through when things get difficult. And so I think that's a big part of the divorce rate, and also kind of ties it.
It's the other side of the coin.
Right.
That is reaching.
I
would think.
Yeah, well, you know, and that also kind of relates to that system I was telling you about, the EPAPE system, right?
Okay, yes,
Which is like this whole system that I've been working on.
EPAPE.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We can go through each point.
EPAPE.
Yeah, EPAPE, EPAPE. Yeah, something like that.
Like that. No, that's my Balkan version of it.
Okay, I like that. Yeah.
EPAPA. Yeah, like, tell me, I'm curious.
Yeah, so this was like, because we've been talking a lot about like just dating in the modern world, right? And especially with people who may or may not be in alignment. For example, like, you know, with COVID and stuff like that, and vaccinations and being unvaccinated, like that's a thing. Like that was a choice that I made to be unvaccinated, and you know, some people have, and many people chose to get vaccinated, and some people are in the portion that kind of regret and this and that. So, but it really shows that what I found is that I think that's a very important decision, which shows the alignment of how people see the world. And so I realized...
It puts you to test.
Yeah. So I realized that I was actually quite a bit in the minority. Like, there's a small percentage of people that chose to be unvaccinated.
Speaking of David and Goliath situation, regardless whether you truly believe you're right or wrong, the realities that you're facing, a weird time to be a minority. Yeah. In a world where minorities seem to be celebrated. Yeah. This minority wasn't really.
Yeah, exactly. Celebrated. Yeah, it's interesting how that happened, because it wasn't to the advantage of the systems and structures and power of the corporations that we talked about.
That's what you were just saying.
That's
right.
Yeah, exactly.
So the claim here is that the initiatives are revolving around the large industrial force. Of whatever is being developed at the time. And as soon as you hit the billions, that's a large investment. Nobody wants to lose $1 billion. So marketing can go. So, but it messed with people who wanted to raise questions. So this system came born out of that.
Yeah, in a sense, because what I realized is, like, you know, I would have like my Hinge dating profile or whatever, and I would, you know, I'd have it just like, hey, this is what I would think would be the thing to say to, like, you know, entice women to like go on dates and things like that. Like, I think this is what they probably want to hear. This is a good game, whatever, that sort of thing. So I would assess and I would look and I would do that, and to you know, varying results. But what I realized was that, you know, when it was successful and I would, you know, connect with these women and have like a, you know, friends with benefits situation or whatever that I had been seeking to create, then when it was rare that I would find someone who was also unvaccinated. And the thing about it is that for me, what I'm realizing is that when it comes to alignment, just in philosophy and in psychology, and particularly in the prospect of having kids, that's an important alignment to have for me personally in a partner, right? Because there are studies coming out now talking about, like, you know, miscarriages and fertility issues and, you know, spike proteins affecting ovaries and testes and all these sorts of things, and potentially causing people not to be able to have children. And so this is becoming a more important thing as I get older. I mean, I'm 38 years old now, and you know, I've got a piece of land, and I would like to, you know, build a house on it, build a community, and have a woman who's in alignment and have kids.
That's right. Yeah.
So that's nice. Where I'm starting to shift my focus to now. And so what I'm realizing is it's like being in the minority and knowing that that ideal partner is also going to be very much in the minority. How do you sort through all of these
such
women?
A mess.
Yeah. To start to like, you know, and I've gone on dates, and then, you know, you realize like the last one I went on, she was like just hardcore Christian and just not on my vibe at all, and ended up just not going well. Not that I have anything against Christians per se, but like, you know, she was vaccinated, and also I work in the cannabis industry, and she doesn't do any drugs at all. So obviously I didn't vet this woman.
It's amazing It's amazing how that right there already creates such like worlds apart.
Yeah.
It's funny because it is true that predominantly, not just countries, but a lot of times even, let's call them states or provinces, have their own dominant vibe about them, you know? And it is this is that, I've come to realize that an ideology is any societal system that follows something that they would, you know, give their life for if they have to.
Right.
You know, you can be ideological with music. It's all you do ever do. Everything's in the name of that. You can be, and it's funny how like almost like you can see the selfishness behind you once you commit yourself. However, if the ideology includes, and that's the idea of doing a collective thing. It's almost as soon as it becomes a village, they need an ideology to keep them together. So how does that ideology work the best way? And a lot of the ideologies that have happened around the world need you to work with their ideology.
Right.
So that's how I you know, understand the, you know, whether we have something against or not of Christianity or not. It's not the matter that there's anything wrong with Christianity as much as that it's a system, just like so many others. The woke system is very similar.
Right.
That come with a set of how
you look at the world,
how you
conceptual filters,
and it needs to be on that ethical ground. It needs to be agreed upon.
Yeah.
And if it's not agreed upon, then there's trouble ahead.
Right.
And I understand that you are more in the world of watching the different systems and kind of working with all of them to create. And I'm with you with that one, because I believe in more you create the relationship directly with the person.
Right. Yeah.
Rather than to have a hierarchical idea guide the guidelines.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and I mean, it's good to have guidance. This is where people can drop the ball if they don't, you know, value the concept of traditional family, of sticking together and all that, with all its, you know, glories and bads.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, there's benefits to that. And so that's the thing, is it's like a Christian ideology could fit in very well with my ideology when it comes down to it. But
or tenets of it.
Yeah, right? Or tenets of it. Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, it's like, you know, we learn in psychology there's a normal curve, right? And most people fall in the middle, you know, in an average sort of way in any sort of, you know, structure. And then you have extremes on either end. And so, you know, depending on where someone is within the Christianity normal curve, they might be extremely Christian, follow everything exactly to the letter, dogmatic, as you might say, or they might be on the other side of the spectrum where basically, you know, they just appreciate it as a philosophy, and they've been baptized, and they like to say that, you know, I follow Christianity, but they are very loose with how they interpret things and how they live their lives. So, you know.
So, if we're gonna mathematically analyze the situation, one could make a claim that if a person who's in total, like, I'm, you know, not part of this game at all, to a person who's just hardcore religious about it, and they fall in love, that as far as the curves are concerned, if you're gonna go halfway through, that means that a person who is not a Catholic would be like, okay, I'll go to the, you know, church on Sunday, I'll do the prayers, and you need to just calm down with the, you know, you'll burn in hell, and, you know, beating me or beating yourself, breathing yourself, or so whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like that's the normalizing factor, and that's why for them, that's why the norm likes to stick to the generic rules, right?
Right.
And you could say that, I think, about even the Muslim world as well. When they say a lot of the time, I'm not a strong practicing Muslim or something. What's the other word that they've said, you know?
I don't know. What comes to mind is like non-dogmatic, which is, it's framing it in negative. There must be like a positive term for it, but that's kind of what I'm seeing is it's like, you know, with Christianity or Islam or whatever, it's like there's going to be people who are dogmatic and there's going to be people who are non-dogmatic. And then, so the question, interesting, is like, would a Christian dogmatic and a Christian non-dogmatic be more likely to connect in a romantic way that would work well? Or would a Christian dogmatic be better with an atheist dogmatic? And, you know, or like a Christian non-dogmatic be, so is it the dogmatism and how dogmatic you are that could be that
they hate each other's guts, but they agree on the dogmatic or something.
Right.
I gotta say, your claim on how much I'm gonna burn in hell is just fucked.
I appreciate that because I feel the same. I'm getting my 69 virgins or whatever.
I would say that it would be that they want to be close. That they agree on because the ethics is about making decisions, especially if it involves children. If you agree on how you're going to handle it, and or just generally when you're in social circumstances, how you're going to respect each other, right? And different cultures come in different packagings of how that is what's expected, right? So that's what I think people, when you buy into a family by and large, you need to learn to navigate in the new social world as well, right? And how the respect flows between.
Yeah, so that's what I think in terms of like finding that partner. Like, I'm not gonna say that maybe she will be Christian, maybe she will be of Islam, or maybe an atheist. Like, who knows? But like, are we aligned enough in our overall kind of ideologies that we're gonna work well together? Yeah. And so that's what the system is that I'm developing this ePay for.
Let's hear it. That's right.
So it's because that it's what I devised to kind of help get deep quick, essentially. So, in what matters to me, and what I find valuable. So the first E stands for evolution. Okay. Because I've been on a spiritual path since I was very young, and even like we used to go to church, and then my dad used to take me to church, and my uncle Jeff and Auntie Pam, like we all had this church that we would go to in Roslyn, and like, you know, and then in Thomasburg too, where I grew up. But like, you know, I'd go to Sunday school, and like I was part of that. And then
and it's a community.
Yeah, it's community. But it wasn't philosophically aligned. It was funny because I was young. Maybe I was like 10 years old, and I think I remember having this moment where I was in my bedroom and I was having this existential crisis, essentially, because of the whole dichotomy of heaven and hell that they would talk about in Christianity. And I was realizing, like, look, I'm a good person, but I also do bad things sometimes. I know. As we know, all humans are like this. We all have a little bit of everything in us. And so I was like, what if I'm like 50-50? What if I died tomorrow and I, you know, on the grand scale of things, I did half good and half bad? You know, would it be a single thought on my last breath on my deathbed that determined whether I went to eternal bliss or eternal torture? And I was like, damn, like...
It's a lot of parameters.
Right? So that's kind of how I was thinking about it. And then I was like, but I know I'm a good person. I knew intuitively, I knew I was a good person that did bad things. So I was like, this doesn't jive. I don't believe a loving God would put, you know, a good percentage of those who are supposed to be following him because they didn't do it the way he wanted to, you know, now you're going to burn in hell and eternal damnation and torture and all this stuff that they said. So basically, I talked to my dad about this. I was like, Dad, I'm like, I don't know about this. Like, this is not seeming to line up. A loving God putting people in eternal torture, it doesn't make sense. Yeah, and so he actually said, I hear you, and you don't have to go to church anymore. And so...
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which was nice. He's a very open-minded guy. He's also unvaxxed. And interestingly enough, he's kind of getting into Christianity as he's getting older. So, you know, it's interesting how all these things sort of play in. And that's why every what it brings to me is that everyone is a unique individual, and whether they subscribe to one thing or another, in the end, I seek to judge everyone on their own unique individual merits and characteristics and how much they align with mine, And so the E in evolution is because from that time moving on, I decided that I was going to live a spiritual life. Like, I still was connected to spirituality, but not necessarily following a dogmatic religion or following a religion dogmatically, but looking at what resonated as truth from many different, religions or spiritual teachers or whatnot. So that's been a part of my path all the way up until today.
Well, because many people just stay in the system.
Yeah, they just...
And once you're out of that system, then you can watch all the other systems around you.
Yeah, and you can choose. Yeah. You can take what resonates. Like, Christianity, the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That maps on perfectly to, the East Indian, concepts of the karma, those sorts of things, right? What you get put out, you receive. And, so that's where I think there's a lot of alignments among all these different sort of religions, and I think a lot of them are tapping into universal truths, like these mechanisms of how things work. And you see it when you do good things, when you're giving, when you're putting out that positive energy, it comes back to you, man. Like when you're smiling, when you're complimenting people genuinely, and when you're having a nice conversation with someone on the street or a barista, and just give them a smile and like, hey, have a beautiful day. You walk out feeling more full after that. But though the intention was to lift their day, it's like, I almost call it, what I call it was like divine selfishness is a way to put it, where it's like, you realize that by going out and doing good or putting out good energy to people, it's giving you that
which allows you to evolve. So that's the number one, is to allow yourself to put yourself into the world of evolving rather than just staying rigid with the ideas.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So with the evolution, essentially, because that's important to me and I've dedicated my life to just learning from whomever and whatever, then as long as it resonates, then it follows that I'm going to want to choose someone who is also similar in that respect, who also is seeking to evolve and to learn and to grow. So that's where, there's certain questions you can ask people, say going on a first date with someone and being like, so tell me something like you've learned over the last year about yourself that you didn't know before. One example.
Like a newer thing. Not something you've known your whole life.
Well, something you've learned, recently. Because evolution is something that's it's within time, essentially. So are you the same person you were last year, 5 years, 10 years? If you're not changing, if you don't have something that you can say like, oh yeah, I learned how I used to hold stress, in my gut, and used to clench up when, I would have, deal with stress. And so recently I learned that actually by relaxing and by loosening, it actually has completely fixed my whole health situation as part of a whole holistic health picture. But that's an example of something that's occurred with me recently.
Because if you're just in that rigid mindset, it just holds the body in place. Mind and body.
Exactly. We're not evolving.
I like. Okay.
Growing. So this is the idea with this first question is just to see if people are self-reflective. See if people are
curious.
Because it'll reveal a lot with how they would answer a question like that, right? What have you learned about yourself recently? And you can frame the question in many different ways, but what you're doing is you're trying to see if they are in an evolutionary sort of
self-reflection.
Or it's just when I went on this date, the woman was just like, oh, I learned that I can move to a new country and be fine. And I'm like, okay. Sure, fair enough, but I'm looking for a little bit more depth than that, and and she ended up obviously being not in alignment in many other ways, but the way that I answered the question versus the way she did just shows a a bit more like depth. And again, maybe I'm being judgmental in a certain perspective, but I don't think being judgmental is essentially bad when it comes to choosing the type of person that you want to build a life with or have a relationship.
And as this is one thing I learned from Marshall of the NVC. He actually is the first time when I heard someone point out is that we judge all the time.
Yeah.
The entire social fabric of our interactions and how we talk to certain people or don't talk to certain people, or whether we're going to have this kind of conversation or that kind of conversation, is completely regulated by little judgments. Those are the means, really. Yeah. Judgment is the mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the idea is for you to know where you're at. Where's your where do your doses of judgments lie? And that's where choosing the judgments, and this is the challenge is to have the confidence, let's say, to take on a task of wanting to carve your own path.
Right.
It's
well, the judgments are like based on your aims. Like, what are your goals?
Right.
Like, if your goals,
people can totally cling to the narratives that float around. There's so many. It's the easiest thing. You just take on. You can write off of your family's religious backgrounds, because I have the same thing, because I've been to churches in the Orthodox Church. I've been baptized, for crying out loud, I'm your good Orthodox boy.
Sure. Yeah.
And we couldn't even get baptized until we came back from a Muslim country. So usually they baptize babies when they're like, just born. Right. But for us, it was not until we were back. So I was like, 8 or 9 when I actually got baptized. So it's like, it's funny how everyone's got their own rituals. And once that's established, the following of that is what's used as the kind of ethical framework that then holds all the people together that want to jump on the bandwagon. So if you're a person who's kind of challenging this or that, but it's funny. It's funny. I think modern life also, and cities, ironically, as much as they are not going back to the small tribal setting, they do give an allowance of being able to meet a variety of people who might mesh with your temperaments more, right?
Yeah.
And from that angle, if one wants to take on that, and then with your vision of being able to eventually build an actual settlement, if you will, with people who are of a similar nature, that is a very noble pursuit, I gotta say. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. And I don't take like personal egoic credit for anything for it.
You're part of the journey.
Yeah, I'm part of the journey, and I have a mentor who was, had this vision long ago and saw the way the world was going, and for me, like, it was tough for a while, because I understood the intelligence and the wisdom of him talking about, like, look, like, things are not getting better when it comes to looking at things on a global perspective, like economically, like you're seeing the States, the amount of debt, etc. And right now, if we want to bring it to today, World War III seems like it might already be happening, in terms of the whole Israel-Iran situation, Ukraine, Russia, like, China, the States,
all of it,
Taiwan, all the things, like, we're definitely living in a time right now of chaos and change. And so, the vision has been to, like, how do you ride that out, in a good way, and reconnect with that which keeps us healthy and grounded and close-knit as humans. And that's where it's like, reconnect with Mother Nature, reconnect with growing your own food and nutrient dense food, and be able to not be dependent on a system which it's in flux at the moment, and you don't know if and when your certain system may either collapse or have major changes that are not good for the type of life you want to live. And for me, like I was saying, like I had trouble with all of this because I love people. Like, I love people in general. I love connecting, and I thought, these people are like, a lot of them are like me. I was able to, I'm very empathetic. I'm like a quadruple Pisces, like I very much can put myself in other people's positions and feel. So I like people in general. Some people are like, I don't like people, I'm the opposite. I very much like people. But what happened, particularly COVID, it was a big turning point for me where I had a realization that, first of all those things that were being talked about are actually coming true now, and now, like, talking about taking away our rights and freedoms, this need to isolate and, these control mechanisms of you can't travel if you're not vaccinated, and all these sort of things started to come into place. And I was like, now these things that were being talked about for all those years are on my doorstep. They're occurring. My freedoms are being taken away. And then for all the people who did get, vaccinated, it's like, and now as more...
the privilege.
Well, yeah, they had the privilege, but as more evidence continues to come out and we start to see myocarditis and turbo cancers and all these things that are occurring, all these unexplainable health situations.
You know what's my take on that direct point? And I'll say this till day's end, I think. The potential side effects that seem to be floating around, and everyone's trying to kind of, many people have just turned their backs on the whole thing.
Sure. Like as in, like
they've moved on. People have moved on.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Nobody talks about it anymore.
Right.
It's not an issue anymore.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
For many people, it's like, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the very act of the result of whether this might end up being adverse or not is, to me, actually a secondary argument. There's like, for me, the front row argument, which is, in the West, you can choose to eat marshmallows all day and nothing else.
Sure.
You can just live on marshmallows if you want.
You won't be living long, but yeah.
Well, you have the full option,
freedom
to do and then you can calculate the health risks and measure the stuff and this and that and the other. And the general premise of the Western system is that we have the freedom to do what we want.
Sure.
Right. And so basically you can go and ski in the avalanche zones if you're gone, you're gone.
Right.
The idea here, the entire premise of what happened with this move in 2021 and 2020, don't get us started with the beginning of the whole thing.
Right.
This masked by the medical interventions a year and a half later, and that's where my argument's at. Is that everything that was delivered was in the context of a boogie variant that was going to kill half of humanity. And to this day, that is the official empirical argument, which is not empirical at all. So it was in the name of potentially something. And so my argument is like, plus, it was shown very early that they didn't spread you could spread the disease. So, if a person is able to eat unhealthily and have a low immune system, and as a result, they want to then maybe do some medical treatment or not, that should all be. It should be medical freedom.
Right.
That's the whole point of the consent.
Yeah.
We can go down the line to see whether your choice might have been bad for you. But the fact that it was enforced was my kind of like, why aren't we then banning sugar?
Right. Exactly.
Like, why isn't sugar banned?
So it's fundamentally...
it should be banned.
Yeah. It's
like, or it should be regulated. This is the regulation that you're aiming for, where we as humans, and again, we now are in the position, and I think this is where you're going with the point, and I'm with you with this, because I'm pretty sure I live similarly, and that is that you create your tribe in the world as you go, that is not going to be necessarily following that or the other ideology, cult, what have you, right? But rather they can navigate with you together. right? And understand it at home. And same thing happens in this case. I'm like, if you are going to just take on the order when there's so much that's not adding up, that's enough for me then why aren't we could be doing so much better as a society if we really want to save lives. Just start promoting. The government just starts promoting good food. Give benefits. If you buy salad, you just get extra 50 cents on your account. Rebate. 50-cent rebates, automatic. Healthy.
Push people towards health, but I think that's the thing is that
that's where you lose me,
Well, pharmaceutical corporations, again, they benefit from return customers, i.e. those who keep coming back. So they have a vested interest in not keeping people healthy because if they were just curing people and sending them out the door, all of a sudden people wouldn't need to purchase their pills anymore.
And I mean, even if a miracle drug is invented, aspirin seems to stop people's headaches. Now you might, have some complications, but by and large, if you go to work, you bought one of those, It just blocks the nerves that it needs to block. You're ready to go.
And I'd say that's where Western medicine, in certain respects, is good and it's positive, but I think...
It depends. I don't it's funny, I've been around doctors where, I was instructed for my, say, back pain when I've had it bad, to just do a double dose.
Take a painkiller?
Well, but then I went back and I'm like, well, I didn't really do that because I kind of want to know where my pain is.
Right, exactly.
And then it was scoff. I'm like, what?
Or where's the headache coming from, right? Which is where the whole aspirin, Tylenol come. So people, again, take the pill. And the reason that, and it covers up the symptoms, but it doesn't get to the root of it. Maybe you were dehydrated. Maybe you're stressed out. You're clenching your jaw.
And that's to your point.
All these things.
That's where you're going. So you have assumed, from what I understand, in the last years, I'm more kind of I'm going to holistically start observing myself. But not just in the context of food, in the context of your psychological state, in context of how you socialize, in context how you're envisioning your future, and then you've noticed physiological improvements, just your general health.
Well, so that's when I turned 18 years old. I was living in Ontario, and then I moved out here to BC, go to UBC, take my psychology degree and whatnot. And so when I did that, when I was 18, I started having gut issues. And what would happen is I would start to see blood in the toilet after going to the bathroom. And I was like, oh, that doesn't look good, right? And there's probably an issue there. And so I was looking into it. And it was initially diagnosed as Crohn's.
My drummer from high school had Crohn's for years.
Right, yeah. So inflammatory gut condition where Crohn's is a particular one where it includes some of the small intestines and a lot of the large intestines, I believe. But what happened over time is that the diagnosis sort of changed as I continued to change how I did things. But initially, the main point was that I would bleed when I would go to the bathroom. And I would literally, when it was at its worst, I would fill toilet bowls full of blood.
Are you serious?
Yeah. And then...
That's internal bleeding.
Yeah. So not only am I doing this, but it was the psychological aspect of looking in the toilet and being like, oh my God.
Oh, it's messing with you on top.
So then I'm stressed. The stress loop, and that doesn't help. It makes it worse. So I even at a certain point I had to literally I would stop looking in the toilet. I would just go.
How long
I would flush it. So it started when I was 18. I'm 38 years old now. So it's basically been a 20-year process. And so during this process, when I would speak with doctors about it...
Right, I was going to ask.
What they would say is that this is an autoimmune condition, and it is not curable. All we can do is manage the symptoms. So we'll give you these mesalamine suppositories, or and hopefully manage it that way. And then and take these pills, these medications, biologics. There's all these different things that they were offering, And
what is that last thing? Sorry.
Biologics.
What is biologics?
Yeah, I don't even honestly really know, but it was
a medical product.
It's a Western pharmaceutical kind of medical product that is often prescribed to people with inflammatory gut conditions.
It's probably like to try to like reduce the inflammation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, all of them are essentially anti-inflammatories of one form or another. But the thing about all of them is that, again, the Western perspective is all about, how do we stop the bleeding? How do we, reduce inflammation? But it's not asking, why is it even happening in the first place? What are all the mechanisms? Is it your diet? Is it your exercise? Is it the way that you process stress? Is it how late you stay up? How early you get up?
How much you sleep?
Exactly. Like all of these different factors.
It's a whole database.
Yeah, exactly. So there's all of these things. So, when I got that diagnosis of, it's Crohn's, and then eventually, it changed to ulcerative colitis, which is just a bit lower down in the intestines. It doesn't include the small intestines anymore. It's just the large colonoscopy. So, I've probably done like one or two colonoscopies in my life, I think. And it got re-diagnosed from Crohn's initially to ulcerative colitis, which was an indicator that actually what I was doing was working, because the inflammation, instead of being the entire small and lower intestines,
Hang on, you went for a test and the inflammation was reduced.
It was reduced.
Were you doing the drugs too?
No. Well, I did do the drugs a little bit early on, just because, when you're filling toilet bowls full of blood, you're like, okay, I'll try anything. Right? Yeah. So that's what I was doing. But then eventually, with just my spiritual perspective and just talking about like evolution and my seeking to grow, there's always been a part of me, whether it's like being an old soul or whatever it is, where I was like, I am not going to accept that this is an incurable disease. Right. I don't buy that. I believe anything can be cured with the will and dedication to figure it out. And not just take the easy path. And so I went on this big healing journey.
Because the drug kind of is an easy path.
It is an easy path.
Because you're putting your trust into a system that says that they calculated it.
Yeah.
And that it was properly diagnosed for you.
Yeah, exactly. It's like putting a Band-Aid on cancer. It's like one of those things where it's, you're prolonging the inevitable.
That's to me, ironically, that is what Advil or Tylenol, whatever are.
Yeah.
Like for me, if there's pain, and it should be only really used. This is the perfect example of something that needs to be used if you're acute, chronic. Like if all of a sudden you have a toothache, boom.
Yeah.
But to just grab it, this is why I'm struggling with coffee as well, because as much as people say that, because there's all these meta studies, meta studies have been on my mind, and I'll probably tie this back into later. But one of the things with coffee that meta studies show is that they reduces Alzheimer's, cleans up to this and that and the other, and then overall you're in a better state. But I'm thinking to myself, are the people who are in these study groups, are they people who work, 80 hours a week and sleep like 2 hours a night?
Right.
Like, and are just caffeine all the way, and you just don't get to like sleep much.
Right.
So, but if you're using coffee, which I sometimes do, I was gonna do it. I forgot actually. There's one thing I didn't do. I was gonna have a little, because I never drink it. So when I do, it just sparks me up.
Right.
And so for the purposes of liftage, I'd say the dosages can work. But once it becomes when you're just, that's all you're gonna just pump yourself with Advil until you get the the promotion. Until you get the promotion.
Yeah. Well, that's
a couple of years,
right?
Yeah.
Well, it's everything in moderation is what I've started to come to really understand, and that's basically, anything is bad for you if you do too much of it too often. You can overdrink water and kill yourself. Like, it's, even though that's obviously important for life, vital. So anything can be a poison if you overdo it. So when it comes down to like, these pharmaceutical things, it's like, yes, they can be a quick fix. They can quickly get you some results. But like, whether it's a headache or whether it's the cause of the bleeding or whatever, it's like, if you're not addressing where it came from in the first place and doing self-work to really get down into those deep layers, then you're not it's just going to come back because you haven't fixed what's at the root cause of it. And so that was a big part of my healing journey, was discerning, okay, what is at the root of this bleeding? Like, there's got to be a reason. And the thing that's cool about the universe, we talk about like karma and life in general. It's like, when you want to know something, when you ask a question genuinely and stay open to the answer, it might be, you might get the answer on a billboard, it might be in a tarot card, it might be lyrics in a song. But when you start to trust in the universe and that you can heal yourself, the answers just start to come, and it starts to become this conversation, and the pieces of the puzzle start to come together. And so that's what
there's happened. The evolution part.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I see.
And what is important is to find out what's underneath the things. And that's actually what comes to the next one, which is P, paradox.
Okay, yes.
So paradox is my reminder to myself to check in when I'm meeting people. What is the surface showing and what's underneath that's not being shown? Because everybody's going to put on their best front in their face, just like going to a job interview, you know.
Does that go for the people who are doing the evolution? I guess to some degree we all, as we evolve, are not always necessarily just searching for the truth when you need to go for a meeting.
Well, so
do we all carry that mask to some degree?
Yes, we all have that mask, and that's the thing, is that humans are walking paradoxes in a sense, in terms of the fact that although we don't always speak our minds, right? We may think something, but say something else. Like, we're not, you know, like you're talking about judgments. We all are judging everything all the time.
Right.
But we learn...
Imagine that's the Ricky Gervais's truth.
Right. Yeah. But we learn not to, you know, just let it all out because of the social consequences. So that starts to stay underneath, and that might grow. It might fester. It might be something deep and dark and negative, but we will hide it because of social norms. So we, you know, when we meet someone, there's always a question of like, what's underneath, you know, and how do we figure that out? So like, one question you could ask on like a date is something along the lines of, so what's something that people generally get wrong about you? Like, when they see you, when they meet you, what do they...
I'm really very nice.
What do they... Right? Yeah, I have a resting bitch face, but, you know, really, I have a heart of gold, you know? So it's like...
Trust me.
Right? Yeah. So whether or not people are conscious of it or not, what this kind of ties into is, tying it back to the whole health thing, is that we all have a shadow self. And you'll hear about this in... you know, the self-help world or the spiritual world, the new age world. And shadow isn't necessarily negative per se. We all have it, but it's aspects of ourself that generally remain unconscious to us, because as humans, we are governed, the statistics vary, but 95% of our behavior comes from the subconscious. And it's only our 5% conscious mind that has any sort of bearing on the situation.
Wouldn't that technically make the person who you meet 95% predict, like whatever their show is, actually there's subconscious talking straight to us? Well,
kind of. If you got to be able to like read what the subconscious is saying.
So how? That's the challenge, right? Because what I'm thinking is that if I have that mask and even I'm not aware, how is someone who just met me going to go past the barrier that I've been living, that is blocking even my own subconscious from myself?
Well, we are sometimes aware of it to a certain extent.
Because I think it leaks.
But because
we are unaware of it.
Yes.
So it is one of those. Again, back to Marshall, he said the best jackal, because he had the giraffe was the person who comes from the hearth, and jackal's the person who's, you know, negative.
Interesting,
right?
Yeah.
And then he would say the best jackals are the ones that talk. The more they give you, the more like, okay, and then you just compartmentalize.
Yes, there's methods like that.
So you can find methods, right?
Yeah.
And
observing.
Right. So it's almost so the step of the paradox is to work through the presentation of what it says it is, and catch the stuff that it reveals that it really is.
Yeah, there's going to be misalignments. There's going to be micro expressions. How did they speak to the barista?
Right.
You know, how did they flip that little comment that they made? You know,
right.
And so paying attention to those things reveals a lot of who they are, which is the reality of them. And so, you know, the question that I mentioned is going to just reveal how much they're aware of their own shadow, and are they doing shadow work, you know, in general or not? Because the shadow work is the people.
What's shadow work?
So shadow work is.
Is this the concept? Where is this concept? Is this from this same?
It applies to the paradoxical nature of humans, which is that we all have shadows essentially, which is aspects of our unconscious that manifest themselves in our behavior. And this is the reason we always pick the same partners, even though there's not a good relationship for us, and we keep making that same mistake, even though our conscious mind says,
very good.
I don't want this kind of person anymore, but yet we keep falling in love with this same type of toxic relationship. You know, that's the subconscious at work, that it's controlling our behavior, even when our conscious mind says, I want to go left, but you end up going right. Then that is an indicator of your subconscious mind at work.
There's a book right in there. We don't have to take it out, the yellow one. It's called Fit for Love. You see that white, yellow stripe on Fit for Love? Mm-hmm. That's a local lady called Olga Sheehan, who was from around here, and then she moved to the Kootenays. That's one of my favorite books. And she in there one of the biggest things that she would be totally on board with everything you're saying right now, from what you just said at least.
Right.
Because she would say, how does a person find love in face of lovelessness? Like, if you never experienced, say, love in your life, when it came your way, would you know what it is?
Right. Yeah. How do you perceive love? What does love mean to you?
And then, so that's why she made the argument from that angle, that if you don't know it, then you'll be making the same mistake.
Right.
Because you're always attracting the emptiness that you've learned.
Yeah, because we're all
came from where you learn. And that's the knowledge that you have within you.
Exactly.
That's how I define it. That's how I like to define knowledge.
And so this is what ties into, where does that shadow come from? And that's our first 7 years of life. We're essentially like subconscious sponges. So we're taking the reactions of our parents, of the people around us. We're just absorbing all of that, and we're learning lessons. We're essentially like an open subconscious. We haven't really developed much of an ego or sense of self. We're just reacting and responding and being patterned essentially by everything around us, our culture, our parents, those sort of things. A good example of how this mechanism works is, say your mom is afraid of snakes, and you're sitting in the backyard together, you're 5 years old, and then this gardener snake just like comes, slithering past, and she screams, and she jumps up, and she like makes a big deal, and then she grabs you up and runs inside or whatever, makes a big reaction out of it. That child is going to be imprinted, and when people have phobias of snakes and things like that, spiders, yeah, that's where it comes from.
I was in Turkey. They actually have scorpions.
Okay.
So it was actually a big deal to watch out.
Yeah.
So my family was just freaked out by the whole scene.
That, and
that translated. Now I'm just afraid.
Sure. Well,
but it would have served me better then, right? So the priming can serve a purpose. It's just a question of whether you're being primed the wrong way.
Exactly. And so you take the second version, which is that the mother's a heptologist and she studies snakes, and the gardener snake comes through and she says, oh look, it's a gardener snake, and she picks it up and she says, oh, this is one of the ones that aren't poisonous, and look at it and look how its tongue flicks. That's actually how it perceives through the flicking of its tongue, and et cetera, et cetera. So now that child doesn't have a phobia for snakes. In fact, that person loves snakes and has a boa constrictor at home,
Right.
And so what made the difference between those two was that response of that parent. And what made that parent respond that way? How their parents or how people in their life when they were young responded to things. So that's where you start to get into like things like intergenerational trauma and how things get passed on. But the point being that we, when we're young, we're always being imprinted, and that's building up a subconscious sort of framework that's it's an OS, an operating system.
So now, say suppose you meet a person with whom you develop a relationship of sorts with, be it business, be it friendship, partnership, fun.
Yeah.
Especially if it's someone with whom you want to develop a relationship with. How does the element of paradox play out once you start knowing the person? Because would the facade and the real individual start being more is the idea behind the paradox to dissolve the paradox, to kind of like or are we always going to be with somebody who has their guards, if you will, and you know what I mean? Because how does the concept of paradox work with the openness of the other side?
Well,
wouldn't it have to like?
Well, are people aware of those patterns? Like, for example, let's take.
Which brings us straight into evolution.
Yeah. So
the idea is to have the person be. It's almost like you would play a part of attending to. Would you? Sorry to interrupt you, but this is my question. Would you, in this process, be attending to those traits of the person if you want to develop a further relationship in a way of like, let's look at this so that it is not some skeleton in the closet, but rather that I'm also with a person who's evolving, which is tenant number one.
Exactly.
Is that the...
because there's a lot of times where things go unspoken in relationships, right? And
I agree with this. I think the skeletons need to be thrown. But it's funny because a lot of people would open up about secrets not to people who are too closest to them sometimes, right?
Yeah.
So you have to... And that's another instinct, right? So it's almost like, how do you suss out when you meet people to which degree you can work with their...
those little intuitions and just observing people, it's like, again, how did they speak to that person? And one thing that reveals people's subconscious patterns often is stress. Like a stressful or unexpected moment is when you start to see what's underneath, because when things are flowing smooth, people can kind of play the role of whatever because there's no challenges to it. But when we get stressed or triggered, a trigger is essentially a response that occurs as a result of, it's almost uncontrolled, a triggering, right, of something, a pattern that's within us that occurs because of some sort of external stimuli, which causes that trigger. And so that's why when we say, I'm triggered, when people say that in the whole woke culture and stuff, what they're basically saying is that, in a certain sense, I'm an automaton and I haven't done my shadow work. Because when you start to analyze, when you have a stressful situation and you're doing that evolutionary work, you're reflecting on those situations. Why did I have that emotional response? It's because of this and that. And so I can give an example for myself and how when I've been doing my shadow work, how that sort of looks. So basically, this was a big part of my healing component, a big component of my healing journey. So when I was young, my mom and dad met in Toronto, and she got pregnant, but they realized that, she wanted to be in the city. He had a little farmhouse in the country, cool Jamaican DJ kind of dude, dude. And she was like, this beautiful traveler who worked on documentaries and TV anchor and things. So
they were at different places in life.
Yeah. So, thankfully, she decided to keep me, but she decided, hey, I'm gonna do this on my own terms. So she flew to Calgary, and then that's where I was born. And then so basically I've grown up in this situation where my parents were never together.
By circumstance.
Yeah, because they broke up before I was born. She wanted to keep me, but so she's on the other side of the country. And so what happened was, thankfully, they both loved me a lot. So they wanted to share me. So what would occur was I would, when I was 4, 5, 6, I would fly as an unaccompanied minor from Calgary to Toronto and back. You know, so like whether it was holidays or Christmas or whatever the occasion was, I would be going back and forth across the country.
So you were in kind of like a city and then over on the farm.
Yes.
City farm.
Yeah.
So you got a taste of both.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's part of why I appreciate both.
For me, I was born in the mountains of Turkey, like hot environment with mountain Turkish kids. And then when I was 8, I moved to the Eastern Bloc style of like the Yugoslavia that's about to fall apart.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That was like as kind of like concrete jungle as you can imagine. Although they did have some nice greenery around. I'll give them that. Mm-hmm. But it was very, very kind of like just built.
Yeah.
Very almost not projecty, but you know,
interesting.
like old building stuff. But anyways, that's hilarious for you to have both.
Yeah, I got
inputs.
both. And I think that, again, it's shaped me into the person that I am today and living in the city, but building this place out in the country.
It's almost nice to have the connection to both, because I truly am realizing that cities do have the manpower, if anything, the energetic power to produce stuff that is that you can't do if in your smaller settings.
Right.
It's almost, I think, there needs to be a return to a balance between people valuing and respecting both city life as well as country life, and not be like, go cities. You know?
Exactly. And you can also you can have cities that have a more nature integration, and thankfully Vancouver is a great city for that. You know, lots of green spaces and lots of parks, and we're surrounded by mountains and oceans. So this is one of the reasons why I love this city, as opposed to Chicago or Toronto, or like these places that are like concrete jungles, like you say. And it's like the green spaces
it's a highway jungle
are minimal. Yeah, totally, 100%. So anyway, when I would be getting ready to fly from my mom's to my dad's, obviously I had a deeper attachment to my mother, being that obviously she was the one who birthed me. She had me for the earliest years, right? But then, she also was traveling around the world and whatnot and selling documentaries. And so it was a bit of a challenge for her in the sense of having a kid, which kind of keeps you in one spot, right? And she wanted to
Did you go with her?
No. So basically,
she would coordinate that.
This is where she would coordinate with my dad, and I go back and forth. But there was an aspect of her that always felt somewhat sad and a little bit guilty about it because of her own sort of upbringing and her own sort of things. So
this is why when new life comes in, there's you and the not in the life, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then as we all get older, you realize that everyone's got their own agency, you know?
Yeah. Sorry, and we very much affect those children. And, so I was affected in terms of the fact that, so just like reacting to the snake, what my mom would do was she would get anxious, before sending me to my dad's. And so even days before, she would start to kind of get sad, and she'd have cries, and we'd have little cries together and stuff because, I'm leaving. And then I would remember, and I still remember to this day, I can think back to those times when I would be in the airport with her saying goodbye, and she's we're both just bawling, crying, right? And again, this is me as I don't know what's right or wrong in terms of all these sorts of things, or
it's tricky because it's just because you want to go over there, it doesn't mean that negates your sadness.
Right.
For leaving, right?
Exactly.
And that's why I'll mess with you. Right?
Well, yeah, and she could have also, if she was a different person, she could have handled it in a way where she's like, hey, now you get to go see your dad. This is a fun and joyous thing, right?
That's right.
And that's fine. I'm not blaming her. She has her own reasons for being
as far as she could take
responding the way she did, but that was her response to it. So then what I realized started occurring in me as, I would fly over to my dad's and, I'd have these cry sessions, that was a little mini trauma for me as a young kid, because what I started thinking was, why do I have to leave you, Mom? Am I not good enough? To be with you, to stay with you, that sort of thing. So what this created in me...
So that came up, you mean?
So what it created in me as I grew older, and this is the stuff that I've learned throughout the years, and it's become more and more clear as I've done, psychedelic experiences, as I've spoken with my mother, as I've spoken with mentors, all this stuff that I'm talking about.
That makes you look at yourself.
Yeah.
Nothing
so
else.
This is the shadow work. So,
I see, I get it.
So now, when I'm like, why do I have these patterns? Why do I have this health issue? And I'm starting to uncover, it's like, okay, well, now there's this child, baby Jay, who's like, I'm not feeling like I'm good enough. So what that did was that created a people-pleasing tendency.
Mm-hmm.
Where what I would start to do is and especially being very empathic or empathetic, I would very much put myself second in almost any situation, be hyper aware of other people's responses to me, and I would do my best to conform my behavior to what I thought they wanted, rather than, what I wanted or my authenticity. Which is the
paradox.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. So so what's, for me, for all those people, it looks like, oh, yeah, Jay's just being agreeable, and, he's like, he's a nice, friendly guy or whatever. But, in the end, I was putting myself in situations that weren't good for me. But that was because I was trying to over-accommodate the people around me rather than thinking, hey, what do I want in this situation?
Gotcha.
Or what do I not want in this situation, i.e. boundary making.
So in a way, we're starting with evolution of the self, mm-hmm. and then when you're wanting to have people now come into the evolving self, mm-hmm. you have a certain amount of standards to watch for the paradoxes,
yeah.
and then work with them so that your evolution matches with the evolution of the underlying personality behind the mask.
Yeah, because
okay.
We all have these patterns that were developed in those early years, and the question is, how aware of it are you? Because the more aware
what was one of the questions again? What was one of the questions you said?
So, what's something that people wouldn't expect about you when they first meet you? So that's an example.
That's the question. Let me think of that.
Just to see,
what's something that people don't expect about you?
Yeah, that they would be surprised to learn about you if they just met you.
Oh. That would be a shadow self.
Well, it depends on how they respond to that.
Oh, hang on. If they know the answer, then that means that they've done the work?
That means, they're aware of... It can indicate an understanding of...
It opens the door to that world.
Yeah, for example, if I was to respond to that and someone asked me that question, I would say, and I said something along the lines of, well, honestly, for a lot of my life, I've been a people pleaser,
Yeah.
And, and then they're like, oh, really? Okay, well, but you're not anymore. No, I actually had to learn how to create boundaries with people.
I'm just a jerk now.
Right? Yeah. I'm just an asshole. I'm just a dick now, But it was like...
It's funny because it's true. It's true that, people pleaser, a nice guy. This is the problem with adopting the world of liberty into one's life to a high dosage. Because a flower that opens up too much becomes more vulnerable to the ruthless, that's back to the original point, to the ruthless nature of the, in my opinion, chaotic world. This brings me to the whole astral fields thing of where is the nugget of what's happening within us? Is it here or is it somewhere else? Right. And for me, I really have come to understand that we live in the world of chaotic forces, that some of which band together, to create different systems, and some can be averse to us, So having a good, and this is why religions work so well, generally, or ideologies. Well, religion is almost too narrowing down.
Right.
That's why I like the word ideologies. I don't like to use the word cult because that one really shows the real extremist.
Well, there's a connotation with the word cult because, really...
It implies that there's something really negative about it. Ideology doesn't necessarily have to.
Well, all religions start as cults, essentially, in terms of the fact that it's it's a small group of people who are essentially believing the same thing and have a small set of rules.
That's right.
And then if it gets big enough, it almost graduates to a religion. But we do live in a time where cults are negatively connotated.
Right.
even though not every cult is the same, just like not every human is the same, right?
Totally.
Every group of people may or may not be using sexual coercion or, brainwashing tactics or whatever that they tend to, blanket in with any group of people that's outside of the standard system.
Would it be fair to call a family unit an ideology or cult from that angle?
Yeah, from that perspective, absolutely.
Because I would. Because the idea behind this is that any societal entity that becomes, you could technically from that angle also call a very heavy, hardcore business organization a cult as well, who believe on you being there on time, leave and get your meet your whatever bonuses and whatnot.
And that might be all for great intentions and for making the world beautiful.
So because that's right. So the conviction is what it's about, and I think that having a good people swear by their own cults. That's the issue, and I think that. I'm with you on that. I actually believe that especially, and this is yet again what large city-state like systems have allowed for, is to be able to be exposed to all sorts of variety. Like I always think of myself as a bit of a curry ideology. It's different spices, different essences. Rasa, that's the whole concept behind Cultura Rasa. That's why the conversations are perfect on this level of what I wanted to achieve, because everyone's got their own essence of how their ethical system got built through their circumstances.
Yeah.
And some people cling to the everlasting word of their spiritual entity through some writings or another. Some people find their paths, and it's almost like people who are temperamentally more interested in playing out the kind of the more normalized way of life. It's almost like I gotta find a place to respect, and we have to find a place to respect the people who are just normal. Because they're the ones who set the standard, ironically. That's how it goes, right? Back and forth. And then how do you expand the wings to watch the differences? And I think that's where ideologies can be tricky when there's a lot of people, right? Because you need a cutting line somewhere.
Right.
And,
things like groupthink occur, and when people start to sublimate their natural tendencies to be a part of the group, I'm just one more thought. I'm very much convinced, I think, that the whole Dunbar's number of 150 is the place where it starts to become too big to create what you are talking about. The concept of building that kind of, I think, a true kind of like good group of society of people you believe who are in your world. That's why people work with the company forever, right? Like, and they know there are 100 people there, and that's their family. Well, and that's kind of like part of the vision of my community development projects, is that it's not just one community out in this one place per se, but it's
a blueprint.
Yeah, it's a blueprint, and it's intended to be a community of communities, interconnected. And so they don't necessarily turn into sprawling super cities, but it's like
it's a colonies.
Yeah, and it's like, and they have their own unique sort of flavor or interest, And there's a really cool video by this guy named Howard Storm. It's on the future, and he had these visions of like a possible future and how that might look. And how he described it was that it didn't look anything like it does today, like 200 years from now. It's like all the technology that we have today was not present. It was just people living out in nature. And how he described it was that they were communities of communities that, and each one would be, of a different flavor. Like, for example, there would be some that were interested more in leisure time and just relaxing, and that's kind of more of what their focus was. And then another was really into like terraforming and gardening and creating beautiful. Others were into music and the arts and artistry. So that's kind of a cool sort of idea for how a possible future could look that is much more healthier and much more in alignment with with nature, because when we do get in these super cities, like you say, it's like this massive group think, this whole push nature out, there's all of these things which are not healing to our planet,
It keeps coming to my mind right now, and I think I need to put it out right now. It's right at the beginning of our conversation when you were talking about creating these, especially, ironically, in my big isomorphic comparison in my writings, I really have come to realize that the systems are very similar in the way they play out in cultural systems. Like, so similar. Mm-hmm. That's why when I say colony, that's one word that is across the board the same in all the systems. Genetic system, bacteria form colonies. Mm-hmm. Cultural systems, tribes form colonies. Mm-hmm. And it's almost the next step is the large multi-level society, but that's where the humanity gets lost because humans actually exist in the tribal setting. Yeah. That's the point. So you can lose yourself up there. Mm-hmm. And that's the
so they say find your tribe, find those
it needs to exist. I'm realizing it needs to exist. The only way it can exist is some kind of a circus in the middle of some kind of a, hopefully better be positive bacteria. It's kind of like, it's not the bad gut bacteria. Right. Because viruses don't have to be good or bad. So they can be good or bad. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily the same for bacteria, right? Gut health bacteria, probiotics, yeah. Be that in your city. Mm-hmm. And then you have your own world, and then if you have reaching out. But there's something I heard where the companies in North America first started their big companies. I don't know if I talked to you about this before, but when they first started paying their workers, the majority of the income of the company's earnings came from were put back into the workers. So they could now just buy a house right away. Yeah. Every worker just bought a house right away because the company made shares. And then this guy analyst was saying how in today's world, many of these tech companies, especially like big media companies, they put less than 0.1% into the world. It's all, and then it all gets stashed somewhere in some banks or like some overseas things, which creates inflation, yada yada. But anyways, all that aside, the movie Mission is a movie I watched recently on an airplane. Okay?
Mission?
With Robert De Niro. Ironically, with Robert De Niro.
Robert De Niro.
You might have seen a poster. He's kind of like with a sword in the middle of a jungle somewhere. It's a classic movie. Doesn't matter. I watched it on the airplane because I realized I'll never watch this again, right? But I used to watch it with one of my exes in the past, and it's a very... the reason why I'm bringing it up is that it was what was happening at the Portuguese down in Venezuela, one of the South or Central American countries. It was the Portuguese and the Spanish that were down at the bottom of the jungles that were trying to assert their territory. Okay, and none of them had interest at all, with the natives that lived above the waterfalls. Right. And there was a whole bunch of them. But because it's hard to get to, who's going to go there? Civilization can't exist there. Who cares? They were just claiming their territories under. These missionaries decided, to go in there and to spread their word, eventually converting much of the people to this because this is what credentials are due, is that humans invented with the Edisons and Teslas and all the machineries and everything. Like, we're incredibly advanced as a civilized society, really. Sure. Like the fridges we have, the washing machines. Yeah. It's insanity.
Relative to tribal societies back then, yeah.
So they showed some of these early technologies to these people. I'm going to reveal the movie to you. I have to at this point. Yeah. You probably, the chances, right? But this is the point. So what happened was they learned the ways of the modern technologies. So they started doing crops, and all of a sudden they had the grains just through the roof. They were just a bonanza of just production. And what they did, guess what they did? Equally divided, give to everybody. Love that. Everybody. Right. And then they started spreading, and that was their ultimate demise. Right. The idea, and this is what I think you're talking about. This is why, for me, it's like, this is why I'm saying stay as don't grow too hard. Just like with the Pride movement. Yeah. The best is when it's the most genuine it is when it's almost like people who are in the community. Well, when it becomes corporate. But to make to close in on this, sorry, where was I? Why was I?
Well,
I just want to close the point about what was I talking about? Oh my god. The last thing I was talking about.
Well, we were talking about tribalism and the sharing, the companies.
Yes, thank you. So they thank you. The Spanish and the Portuguese, when they heard of the tribe, they just basically sent in the infantry together with the priests and the missionaries and the children and everybody. They just went in with the and they had to. They show in the movie how they're like have to go over nobody wants to go there, but because it was spreading this idea that people are gonna share equally. It's like how dare you? Anyways, I had to bring it up because ever since you've been talking about it, I'm like, wow, you're with those people.
Yeah,
you're in that mentality.
Exactly,
that's your framework.
100%. For sure, and that's it. And that's why those things can get attacked and do get attacked or framed as cults or whatever, regardless of.
But they are, as we agree. Everything is like a family is a cult.
But is it a benign or is it a?
That's the point. That's the point.
A negative one.
The word is not adverse is one.
Malevolent.
Yeah, you're on it. You're on it.
Yeah, exactly. And there can be all in between, just like there's all kinds of different humans, right? So that's the point. But the goal is, what is the purpose and what is it seeking to create?
Okay, so we got the third ladder.
Right. So.
Or do you have more here?
Let's see. So in terms of the paradox, we were talking about like the people-pleasing thing with me. Right. So I'll kind of wrap that up and then we can move forward. So basically, so that is something that resulted from a certain set of circumstances that occurred when I was young. Before, in that period where your subconscious gets imprinted, I developed a belief just because of how things played out in my own unique sort of way of seeing the world. I decided that, Jay's not good enough, or, he has to, sublimate what he really feels, or not really have or not say no to people and always be very agreeable. Otherwise they might leave me, just the way my mom, I felt like my mom was leaving me, even though she wasn't leaving me, but this is what we perceive as this is what I perceived, right? So then...
I can really relate here.
Right. So then what I would do is I would get very stressed if I had anybody being critical and because I'm so sensitive, I could pick up if they had any sort of negative responses to me, and that might have been totally just their shit. But for me, as a very sensitive person who's hyper aware and people pleasing, I'm very much like, you gave me a dirty look, or you didn't call me back, or you this or that. Then what I did was I would start to beat myself up and be like, I shouldn't have done that. And again, like when we talk about game and dealing with like women and relationships and attraction and things like that, it's like, when you're becoming the people pleasing sort of, person, that agreeableness actually becomes a repulsion, essentially, rather than an attraction, and a lot of times, because generally people want people who are self-aware and who
not too open.
There's a level of disagreeableness, like the bad boy sort of thing. It's these people who are leaders, who can protect, who have boundaries. There's also evolutionary reasons why, but people who are overly agreeable, that's the whole quote unquote nice guy. Right, and yeah, sure. What do you want? What do you want to eat? And you just
that's a funnel. Funnel.
Yeah, and you see how that just kills your attraction, right? So that's one level which brought challenges in my love life. So that's part of what helped me kind of discern that when I was self-reflecting. Why aren't these relationships working? Why isn't attraction happening? But so in terms of the whole shadow work and how that is, related to my healing journey, I realized that I was internalizing this belief of not being good enough because of that situation. And so I'd be beating myself up a lot. I'd be hypercritical. I'd be overly perfectionistic, all of these sorts of things. And I would I would be inward directed with my ego. And there's an interesting thing my mentor taught me, which is that some people, there's kind of two general types of egos that people will have. Some people, yeah, well, just in this particular example, there's people whose egos are inward directed, and there's people whose egos are outward directed.
All right.
So, for example, like, you know, when someone says, the boss says, hey, you did a bad job, someone like myself would be like, shit, I fucked up. I have to, I should have done that better. Beat myself up, stressed, ruminated about it. This was the stress and the internalization and this clenching, which was part of what was causing the bleeding of my colitis, as I've learned over time.
Oh, I see where you're going.
Is there's an emotional stress response.
It's a constant
constant, yeah. So I've constantly, whereas other people have an ego that's more outward directed, where the boss says you didn't do that right, and it's like, fuck you, you should have told me to do it this way.
Or they go beat someone up.
Yeah, exactly. so rather than internalize it, they don't take the blame. And you know what my mentor said was that it's actually easier to work with people who have that internal
well, because they'll
ego.
Always be agreeable.
But also it's easier to heal them oftentimes because
healing process.
Because what you have to do is build those people up. You know, you have
which is harder than trying to tame the crazy
exactly
animal.
You don't have to say stop. You know, you're basically saying stop blaming yourself all the time and start realizing that it's actually there is other people's faults at play
and the universe at large.
Yeah, exactly. So, start having boundaries, start knowing how to say no, start having to discern about people and not just be agreeable, people pleasing to anybody and everybody. Sure, you can agree with people, but it's because you truly believe and resonate with what they're saying because you know who you are, right? But when you're just like, I'm this person who's whatever you want me to be, then that's where
you off then.
It's never gonna work out well. They're gonna, perhaps reject you or leave or whatever, and then you internalize that and whatnot. So this was the pattern. So coming into the whole shadow work thing, that's an important thing that I had to learn was boundaries and not people pleasing anymore by realizing that I am good enough. I had to build my ego up and say, hey, look, it's not always my fault. Sometimes I am just doing my best. And it's all these chaotic circumstances of the world and life that we live in.
Giving the credit where it's due.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And sometimes it is my fault. And that's fine.
Which is fair enough.
But it's being discerning. Yeah. And it's not so.
That's called being fair.
Exactly. Yeah. Right? So this is an example of me doing shadow work and realizing this was an aspect of myself. So say when we come to that paradox sort of question, and it's like, so
it's self-work more than just the other person.
It's the self-work. It's like, so now when we're having conversations, I can have a conversation like this with you or with a prospective partner, and I can say, hey, this is what I went through and this is how I evolved. And this is the shadow work that I did, the paradoxes I realized within myself, that I was just being agreeable, but it was actually because I felt not good enough because of the way that my mom treated me when I was, or not that she treated me, but the circumstance that occurred that I interpreted
the
to be...
The influence of your mother's ways.
To be like rejection or whatever, even though that wasn't the case, but that was what I believed it to be. So then... The healing came also in the reframing of that situation. And so I would speak to my mother and I would say, and over the years I'd be like, so,
you have context now.
Yeah. And then she was like, well, I loved you so much. And I did have a little bit of a feeling of guilt, but it was just hard for me to let you go because you were so bright and so beautiful. And I loved to have you around. That's why I was so sad, but also I had my own stuff going on in my life. So when I wanted to, travel around and so there was this thing where I didn't really want to let you go to your dad's. There was part of me that was like, hurting, but at the same time, I knew he was a good dad. He would be a good influence. And as a young boy, it was good to have a strong male influence. And my dad was a great dad. And I'm thankful for how that all played out. But so in terms of my healing, what I eventually did was reframe that situation to, my mom was not rejecting me. I was good enough. In fact, I was more than good enough in the sense that she loved me so much that that's why she was responding that way, because it was hard, but she truly believed that my dad would be the more kind of stable male influence, like what she's globetrotting,
which is important.
And he's he's on the farm in Thomasburg, you know, small little town in Ontario, and he's got his chickens and ducks, and he's super stable and he's diligent, and that's where I got a lot of those traits from. So I'm very thankful that it all played out.
Very good.
You know, because she's always been a traveler of sorts, which isn't great for a young child necessarily.
No, well, that's difficult. Stability is good for child rearing.
Yeah, so it was all with good intention that she, you know, and lots of love that she, you know, I was going back and forth between them. So that's where I had to eventually come to the point where I realized, it was actually, I am good enough, and that belief that I had was incorrect. I am good enough. And so by reframing, that's the shadow work that I've done. And so now I've integrated that shadow.
And everyone, not just us, our parents, everyone is playing the same game. Mm-hmm. And from that angle, the way I always usually like to think, because I really adopted the world of needs as my ideology. NVC, I could say NVC is my ideology, actually. Whether I would die for it, I don't know. But one thing that it outlined was, that I learned from it, that I've come to recognize, is that if you want to honor the need that is unmet within yourself, right, and it's not getting met, one of the best ways for people to bridge that is just to simply talk to people about it.
Yeah.
And for all intents and purposes, who knows how many people your mom had at her availability to be able to really open up to at the time.
Right.
And then that's the difficulty, because I always find that you know, if you need to get a need met, just go, go get it met over there. That you don't need to, that doesn't mean that the person who's not interested in that need, in this case, the you know, crying it off is just natural, right? But the idea is that if it becomes, and that's my guess, what might have happened is that it became just such a dose. And it was not directed somewhere where somebody else could just hear her pain.
Right.
Because it was really just about somebody being able to hear the pain. So it's kind of leaking around, right? And that affected.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
so it didn't come, right, but it was not coming from any malicious. It's just that there's the overwhelming elements of what she was going through, and her circumstances. You said she was going through stuff. Who knows, right?
Exactly.
And then years later, everyone needs to kind of like take a step back and be like, okay, what did? And I
have those conversations. Yeah.
I would say that I've become, to some degree, maybe if not harder, but more discerning ever since 2020 and 2021. I'm just speaking of, now, do we call it a trauma? I actually personally probably would. Because the influence of the kind of governing reach, where you're not wanting to go along with it, was actually a very stressful experience. Yeah. Especially having had a child at the time as well, who need to get to the schooling system and playing around, seeing how to work with kind of the incoming orders. It's very, very stressful.
I could see how it would be even harder with a child, for sure.
Because it's not just, it was both of us, right? And then there was moments where we had to support each other. And then that created one of those where, you know, people who disappeared. That's, I think, the biggest, forget whether the product worked or not. Is that people who just disappeared from wanting to give any empathy. You know? That actually, I think, stung the most. And that was the trauma in me. The abandonment was right. So it wasn't that somebody came and hit me, because bidding away is actually a hard blow for somebody, just because you had a different judgment view of the situation. And then so how do you become true to what you're seeing is happening, and confront whatever the prescribed mantra was floating around, and then there's and that can hold pain. And it's you can this is the non-empathetic element, is that how much it's just kind of shut down and laughed at, which to me shows the total psychopathic, corporate wink influence of how much they just don't care, because the numbers show, the meta studies, and for all the people who are listening to this, just to throw another one in, it's on my mind, it's that it is precisely the Achilles foot, or was it the ankle?
Heel.
You know, his heel is the very existence of multitude of scientific researches. Because what that shows is that science is not as precise as we would think. And with the, you know, usually you would make the, and you want to keep doing it so you can narrow it down. But, you know, when things become in a world where it could be this thing or it could be this thing over here.
Right.
And then they're completely opposite. Like it can't be here or there. Like it's either this or it's that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then you're calculating averages and saying it's veering off to that side over there. I'm like, well, how do I know that that side now simply is just not corrupt? Like if this one made the mistakes, how do I? But it's either mistakes or it's corruption. Because to go back to your point of how corruption can just sneak in, how do you manage? That's the biggest. And I've come to the realization that that corrupt element of humanity, unfortunately, emerges on all levels of society. You have to always maintain it.
Yep.
Because you have to come head on with it and deal with it. And then that's the negotiations that we have to do in our lives. And every person who would want to be smart about this, I think, is well advised to learn to, as you said, to know how to stand on your feet, know your boundaries.
Yep.
Anyways.
Yeah. And know how to assess people and choose your tribe. Find your tribe and choose those people that resonate with you. And how do you do that in a cityscape? And so that's where this sort of EPAP system comes in, because it's like, I'm like, how can I get to the heart of, you know, who people are in a quick way? So you've got your evolution, you've got like the paradox, how aware are they of their shadow self, their self-work.
Great.
So the A stands for abstract. And this is a good one just to see what their lens or perspective is on any particular abstract topic. So the question could be something along the lines of, so what do you think makes a good relationship, or what do you find sparks attraction? This is a good one on a date because it's got some, you know, man to woman sort of like...
There's connector stuff.
Yeah, connectors there that can lead down the type of conversation you might want to have with a prospective partner, intimate partner. But the point being, it could also be a question of what is loyalty to you, or what does freedom mean to you? You know, it's pretty much any sort of abstract concept that it's going to reveal some sort of perspective or lens that they have on something. All right. So, for example, like if I ask you, what does freedom mean to you? You know, and we can relate that to, like, you know, the freedom to have like bodily autonomy, for example, and to choose whether or not to put something in my body or my system, right? So that's something that someone might say who chose to be unvaccinated, for example.
That's right.
Versus someone who'd say freedom is, hey, my ability that I can just hop on a plane and fly wherever I want, whenever I want. You know, and that's freedom to them. That's right. You know, so it's the same concept of freedom. It's an abstract concept, but one is coming from a place of, you know, the aligned with the unvaccination, and then that sort of freedom of sovereignty, self-sovereignty, you know, versus like a type of freedom that's very much within and aligned with the system. And hey, so freedom meant getting that vaccine because that allowed me to go and fly wherever I wanted.
That's your contract with the society.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So by asking any of these sort of broad questions, you know, an abstract concept like freedom or love, what does love mean to you, etc., you know, that will then give you an insight into how that person sees the world or that particular concept.
All right.
Yeah. So that's the A.
Okay.
And then the next P is polarity. So polarity is essentially having people decide between a this or that sort of, you know, question. So for example, it's like, you know, would you rather sit on a patio having some drinks, or would you rather be out hiking the Chief and getting to the summit and looking at the mountains?
All right.
You know, beautiful view, right? It can, or are you more fire or are you more water? You know, whatever it is.
What's the word?
Polarity. Because I believe we live in a world of polarities, you know, dualities essentially. Like the yin yang symbol is a good, I think, representative of that. You know, there's always like a, you know, just like the polarity in man and a woman, you know, that creates the attraction. Plus and the minus of a battery. There's always the night and day. There's always these opposing sort of, you know, characteristics, which is, again, good when you're assessing a prospective partner and you want to see if there's attraction and polarity. For example, oftentimes very masculine men are attracted to very feminine women and vice versa. And then also very, more feminine men are often attracted to more masculine women. There's this almost this, we're attracted to that which is of the opposite pole to where we are. So that can indeed reveal some things about the, potential attraction and alignments or whatnot. But then it gives you good insight into what kind of person are you?
Would it be fair to frame this as a yin and yang hologram? Imagine it. So it just emerges gradually on each point. And you see yourself as a dosage. It's almost like, think of it as a paint, where you're stronger in certain elements that you're in. And then the individual comes in. Would you say that this would be a good, this aligns with that? It just made me think of it. And that is that holographically, yet again, the other person would fill the gaps that are missing. And bring the perfect polar match.
Right. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Because there's certain things where it's good to be the same.
Ethically, we covered that more on the because I'm thinking, but it's the ethics is. I think because I've come to realize recently through this video I'm about to release as well, that ethics actually really can move around, and if you have a strong dose of masculine influence, the ethics change a bit differently, right? So, but what I've really come to realize that it is really about balancing the dosages of each, rather than you can't get rid of it.
Yeah.
It's in us.
Yeah.
So you have to learn how to balance it. And I've come to realize that it's the very elements of masculine order. And if somebody's very good with putting things in order, that means their capacity for doing the feminine elements are just not as strong.
Right.
And having somebody else who will fill that gap is the polarity element.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
So it's a complementariness, which is finding that perfect partner, let's say, and it's and there's going to be certain similarities, which are that, hey, maybe we're both vaccinated and we think that's the best thing for having kids, and we see this way in self-sovereignty and whatnot. Right. But then at the same time, I have the more masculine way of doing things. I like place ordered. You like to decorate with flowers everywhere, and do the pretty parts of the gardening or the cooking
I have
or
that
whatever.
in my life. Yeah.
So it's so I think there's both of those things at play. So some similarities are important and some differences are important. And so the question is, are those similarities and differences harmonious in a way where you are going to amplify each other in a good way?
You know where that really shines? It's in the element of archy, which is in the governing zone. Because a relationship, by and large, even though it's one-on-one, when there's only two people, it can be the nucleus of governance can be one or the other.
Right.
So it's the idea of balancing them back and forth, right?
Yes.
In which case, especially if it's with a female-male relationship, you see that interplay of how much word, how many times does the female voice count, and how many times does the male one count? Right?
That's great, and I just want to interject that it applies to that circles and lines that we were talking about earlier. Because the circle is the feminine, right? It's the inclusiveness.
100%.
But then if you always stay there, then stuff doesn't always get done.
That's right.
So at a certain point, you have to switch over to the masculine of, okay, this is where we're going,
dance.
Let's go.
It's a dance, right? Back and forth.
Yes.
They work together. And what happens, I think, is if say you're a person who's in a relationship more of a masculine man, naturally speaking. I'm not talking about conditioning. I'm talking about your just natural self.
Right.
That means that in a relationship, but one thing that I've pointed out to you before, I believe, is that the governance, which is what I'm pointing out, is in itself a masculine trait. That's the line. And females, just as much as males, are both able to carry out orders. Mothers do it to their children all the time. You know, if they're a strict patriarchal mother. Now notice, it's a woman doing the act, but it's considered patriarchal for the mere reason that patriarchy represents masculinity that exists in female, and that masculinity ironically makes the femininity more. And there's women who are more agreeable and they'll mesh with that. But the kicker is in the act of governance. So once females rise themselves to want to say, not rise themselves, when the instinct kicks in to want to call the shots, their feminine traits influence the situation. So the ethics changes. Right? Yeah. So there's also that balance of whether it's not just whether who's calling the shots. It's also whether how are the shots being influenced from the masculine and the feminine domain, and that there needs to be a balance between those as well, which is ultimately that respect that you can build. I like the polarity one. It's almost my favorite. Because it shows the yin and yang dance.
Exactly. And I think that's a fundamental aspect of our reality and of our relationships. And, you know, the Tao talks a lot about it, but it's like this balancing, right? And that's what's, important. Like just, in every, let's say utopia or utopic sort of situation that occurs, oftentimes there was this seed of struggle that was required in order to create that. Like, it's not easy for me, developing and building all the resources to help, create a community sort of thing. And it hasn't been an easy road, right? And so almost when you look at the yin yang, it's like, there's like that black in the sea of white on the one half of the yin and the yang, right? So sometimes it requires some negative, whether it's like challenge or like a journey of difficulty in order to create, that beautiful, energetic healing place that we want. And then the same occurs on the opposite end of the spectrum, right? Where it's like, when there's a seed, there can be a seed of light, of let's say goodness or good intention, which creates much in the way of chaos and negativity. And an example that I like to use for this one is in the treatment of parents and children, and particularly in the way of like when they do something, like how you show love, for example. So say a mother loves her child a lot, so she just gives that child whatever she wants all the time. That's a good positive intention. I love you. So, oh, you want some ice cream? Sure. Oh, you want some cake? Sure. Oh, you don't want to go to bed? Stay up. Oh, so, okay, it's coming from a place of love. Let's say that seed of white. But what does that create? That creates a woman who's sick, who's diabetic, who doesn't have good boundaries or like discipline,
that was a big one.
That we see all these entitled people out in the world now who have no discipline, and who the Karens or all these types of people who are just like the
end receivers become spoiled,
right? And so you can start with a positive intention. I want my child to feel good in this moment, so I'm going to give them an ice cream cone, but that can create a negative result in the end.
That's right.
Versus, hey, no, you're not having the ice cream today. You're having, spinach.
Right. And that's a loving act.
And the kid cries, and the kid's mad at you, and and they throw the spinach on the ground, and so it almost seems like a negative circumstance.
But
and
really,
yet what occurs is you now have a disciplined person who likes to eat salad, and now they're healthy and they live a long, happy life.
I exercise that in music all the time, because I have rigid sections. Like, it's all very composed. But the way I instruct musicians is, as long as you know the framework, and do the melodies. But other than that, you can solo around if you want.
Right.
You can dance around. Just make sure you join in with some of the moments.
Right.
There.
Right.
So as a result, it's just really a journey of artists just exploring within a rigid system. But it's free flow.
Yeah.
It's a free flow within rigidity. I think that's the golden middle, really.
I think you're hitting on that when you talk about like chaos, like we live in a chaotic world, but also there are these pockets of order, and there's these types of order, and it's like that's the polarity. That's the duality. That's right. There's both, right? And how they interplay determines how beautiful the experience is. Totally. If there's beautiful balance and harmony within these two opposing forces, then you create something amazing. Right. And if it's not, it can be disharmonious.
You just don't want to. You don't want to throw your bicycle off too far.
Right. Yes.
And there is, unfortunately, there's all these people, the thrill seekers, who ruin it forever on it. Right? You see, I'm gonna just show you. See that record at the back? Yeah. Can you just you don't have to bring it out, but just pull it out a bit so you can see. Pull it a bit more if you can. So that's the artwork that I did for one of my albums. Beautiful. And the idea with this was that here's where the birds are relaxing, and then they go into fast, and then relax again. And it's almost like there's two moments where the system relaxes, which is the yin and yang. This is my yin and yang, and it's in the form of living organisms. I chose birds, but we're all living. Fish or, it could be us. It could be us with our own habits. And whether we take a breath and then we go and breath and go. That's I think. So anyways,
very cool. That's awesome, man.
Thanks, man.
That's a really cool concept. I like that image.
Yeah. So why don't we just, for the sake of conclusion, we'll do the last
I'm so eager.
Yeah, totally. So this one, last one is embodiment. So what this is it comes from the tantric world, which I love. I love tantra because they're very much open to different types of relationships. They're a lot about communication and consent and boundaries and desires and really getting to know yourself. So there's a lot of shadow work involved in that, because the goal with, especially like kind of modern tantra, like, you know, there's the Eastern, you know, strict sort of like type of tantra. I'm talking more about, this is the type of stuff that goes on around Vancouver here. It's like, you know, where people...
I know the world.
Yeah. Well, they'll have festivals and they'll, you know, be talking about like, hey, these are all the different types of relationships. You can have all the different, you know, types of, you know, polyamory, where it's like, you know, you have the unicorn or whatever, where it's like the couple and they have the one included, or, you know, there's I remember just seeing this whole huge chart. It was just like, there's all these different types of relationships you could have. So they're very much into alternative ways of connecting, where everybody is being respected and getting their needs met, and being very self-aware and incorporating spirituality and intention into like lovemaking, for example, like, you know, rather than just like, you know, sex for the goal of like ejaculation and just working that way. Like a lot of the way of the superior man, David Theta kind of like tantric sort of concepts, so that you circulate that energy around and you preserve it. And if you are going to choose to climax, it literally is a choice, and you might do it every 2 to 4 weeks, and it's an offering rather than, you know, what it sometimes can turn for a lot of people modern day age, which is like a depletion essentially. So depending on how
world of difference, eh?
Yeah.
It's so different.
So I love the tantric world, and I do a lot of those practices just in my own life, and so one aspect of the tantric world which I really appreciate is they do things called like authentic relating. They also call it circling here. They have little get-togethers where they do this sort of thing, where you get in a group, whether it's dyads, so you do a one-on-one and then you kind of switch as you go, or you get in a big circle. And basically what everyone's doing is they're asking, like, so just, you're only expressing what you are feeling in the moment. You're not talking about what happened in the past much. You're not like, you know, you're not like, hey, this is what I want to do with the future. It's everybody get present. They do some meditations or exercises to get you into the present moment. And then they ask, okay, so express, like, how are you feeling right now? How are you feeling in your body right in this present moment? And that's a good example of embodiment and a question that you would ask someone if you wanted to see how connected people are.
The good old, how are you?
Yeah, exactly. But a little more deep, a little more depth. But that's the idea.
Don't ask a Slavic person. They'll be like, oh, that rash, man.
Right, exactly.
They'll spill it all out.
Yeah. And what most people do is they'll tend to talk about the rash they got a week ago, or
But that's in the past.
Exactly.
Right. So there's a total intention.
There's an intention with this type of question where it's like, so, and when they answer, you can always say, but like, how are you feeling like right now? Like,
all right.
What are you experiencing in your body? And it's a good way to assess how present people are, how present they can become, how self-aware they can be, and how real shit can get with people. Because that's one of the things that happens when you go to these authentic relating things, where it's like, you're just speaking what's authentically coming up, and it just starts off with like, oh, like, I'm a little cold, it feels like, this kind of like breeze is coming through and I feel a little uncomfortable, and the other person will say, yeah, I feel that too, and my neck is a little sore and I feel a little tense in my chest and kind of like a little bit anxious, and then the other person says, oh, well, I feel like I can almost sense that anxiety in you right now. I'm empathic. I'm almost feeling that. And so, I feel like I'm drawn. I want to help you. I want to know why you're feeling anxious. I have this impulse to know. And then the person might be like, well, I had a really tough experience today, and it just keeps coming back into the present moment where I keep reliving this time where I was crossing the road and this person on this bike almost hit me and they gave me the finger, and literally it's still in my body, like I'm feeling it in this moment, and then the other person will be like, well, are you still feeling that? Is there something that you feel in this moment might help you alleviate? And so
is it creating grounds for self-expression?
Exactly.
In the moment.
Yeah, and it's
facilitating.
Non-judgmental.
That's right, of course.
And it's just
and there's another human listening.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, it's some of the best therapy you'll ever have.
Not bad.
It's just like when you get to just be authentic, and that's kind of ties back into the whole healing thing of the whole people pleasing.
It's almost like a confession at the priest.
Yeah, exactly.
In a way.
Yeah, in a way.
But no, it's not like you're going to start talking about your sins. Oh, I sinned, Father.
Right.
That's in the past.
But
never mind.
You get to.
There's a witness there to attend to your pain or whatever, not necessarily pain, whatever it is.
Or you get to know what's going on with you.
I would coin this already as your spiritual shavasana.
Nice.
Because like shavasana is about integrating whatever you've been doing in the last whatever session of yoga.
Yeah.
To just allow the body to hear out.
Yeah.
By relaxing it, and this is to having gone through whatever you've been going through, to pose the questions to allow your spirit to just reveal where it's at, so you can attend to it and to integrate it.
Yeah, and then you start to realize how much in your day-to-day life you are disconnected from how you're feeling.
Okay,
and you're unaware of that. So
keep that connected at all times.
So,
what's the word again?
Embodiment.
Embodiment
is the last one. But it's like, for someone like me who's looking for someone of a similar sort of way of seeing the world and being, it's like, how do you respond to that question? And can someone drop in and really be like, I'm really feeling, there's a layer of sadness kind of underneath everything. Oh, well, what's that coming from? Well, yeah, like I had a fight with my dad like last week, and like, and whatever. Like, can people be honest, and are they that self-reflective that they can, and they can reveal like, okay, this is how I'm actually feeling, no bullshit. Again, these masks, these polarities, like what's really going on? How can you reveal that?
What's totally unexpected example for me on this level is when my dad passed. One of the things that you realize with when death comes and the mourning process is kind of embarked on, people will the whole process of giving sauczeście, when you give your condolences, is to express how you're there with their sadness, or with whatever they're going through would be probably the proper way. But I've realized that a lot of it implied that I would be sad, because I got to tell you, sadness wasn't the frontliner,
right,
in this occurrence, and but it's one of those where I realized that the society, assuming, and in good heart, attending to my sadness, which also existed, did not know the turmoils that were going on for me.
Right.
They were related to family dynamics of all sorts of, right? Which is another, I think, one of those masks.
Yeah.
But I realized, and I didn't have a problem expressing, my angers.
Right, right. So anger was the front line.
It was so front line, without getting into detail about what. But it's funny, once you allow yourself to ride the wave of what's actually happening, then you get to learn about where is this coming from.
Exactly.
Instead of just like, I'm just sad, and then whatever else is going on, no, that cannot be. I cannot feel like that.
Yeah. How authentic can you be? How vulnerable can you be? Right. When you ask a person like, "What are you really feeling?" Can people tap in to actually be like,
"Right,
I'm actually uncomfortable with the situation."
It can be a daunting task.
Yeah. So then this is a good way when we're seeking to find people who are like us, or find people who resonate, is to ask such questions like this and see how people respond. What is their response? Can they be vulnerable and tell you, like, honestly, like, I'm a little nervous just meeting you right now at this coffee shop here, and I had a bit of a crappy start to my day, and so feeling a little bit anxious, but also excited, and I'm happy to be here with you. And can someone be honest like that?
Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing here.
Yeah, right? Totally, yeah.
They put me up to it.
Right. And so are people going to be real, authentic, or are they going to be like the nice guy or the nice person, the people pleaser?
Which is mostly what you do get. Exactly. But this breaks the shell. I see. That's why it's an important example. Okay, gotcha.
Right.
Wow. All right. So hang on. So what's the acronym then again?
So EPAPE. Which is it's also palindromic, I think, which is that it's the same forwards and backwards, which is cool. But evolution, paradox, abstract, polarity, and embodiment. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Wow.
So this is like...
So you just have it in your front as you go forward.
I devised this after this. I've been on enough dates now, and this last one was like one where I was like, okay, I don't want to waste my time anymore. Like, and also the fact that, like, I also wasn't authentic even on this particular date. And so the lessons continue, right? In terms of the fact that, like, my intention was to take this girl out for bubble tea, see, if the vibe is good. If it's good, we'll go from there, sort of thing. But I was like, we're walking down the street. I'm like, yeah, let's get some bubble tea. And she's like, oh, bubble tea. And I could sense, again, that sort of empathic sort of sense of she wasn't thrilled about that idea, even though I would been stoked to have bubble tea, right? But I got that sense, and that's what I was like, want it? She's like, oh well, I'd rather have a proper drink. I was like, oh, like cocktails.
Ooh, that could be a bid. That's technically a bid.
Sure, right. So I was like, okay, yeah. Why don't we just keep walking? Why don't we find a nice place? I found like this place called the Jungle Room on Denman or whatever, and I take her in there, and we look at the cocktail menu and order a couple cocktails, and then we're having this conversation, right? And then. Again, I'm in the cannabis industry, and then, I mentioned something about drugs or whatever, and she's like, oh, I don't do drugs. And, like, this whole thing about, like, oh, drugs are just bad. They're just not, like, I don't do any of them. I've never have done them. Ayahuasca, DMT, mushrooms,
that's a meme.
Nothing.
That's your meme. Right. Your meme.
Right.
It's a judgment call.
Yeah, and I was like, that, for me, is kind of a bit of a deal breaker in terms of the sense that, like, that is what I do. And you like the polarity, like
you take what she said and you just slip and say, "Oh, but I love it. I love the weed, and I love the
right." And then you realize
the deer light.
Oh yeah, the alignment just totally. You realize that we have our deal breakers, we have our red flags. The whole idea of the EPAP is to find those
non-negotiables.
Exactly, figure that stuff out early, because what happened was like so we're having these drinks. And I'm not even a big drinker, but I'm like, okay, whatever. Like, I'll sip. Sometimes if the vibe is there, it can help enhance a little bit and keep things flowing in a good direction.
Totally.
So I'm not opposed to having a cocktail with a lady, but, she's...
But that's another prescription.
Right.
It has to be a drink. It has to be...
Yeah.
Instead of just being, what do you feel like doing?
Yeah. Well, and that's just kind of... It's the standard thing. And then I've kind of had, like, a little bit, and she's downed her whole thing, and we have this conversation about drugs, and I'm realizing, okay...
I don't know, for someone who drinks that much, she seems to be very opinionated on drugs.
Yeah, well, that's what I was telling her. I was like, so alcohol is a drug, right? She was like, well, no, like... not really. And I'm like, okay, so here's where I got the concept of abstract. I was like, so can you define drugs for me, please? You know, that's what I said to her. I was like,
it all becomes a technicality.
Well, and then so she says, oh, it's like, you know, it's stuff that you like get addicted to. And I'm like, okay, well, no, that's not the case. No, because not everyone gets addicted to every drug.
Is caffeine a drug?
Is caffeine a drug? Because people drink it all the time.
Is sex a drug?
Exactly.
Well, according to Brian Ferry.
Right. Right? Exactly. So something that you can, that is drugs equal addiction to her. And I was like, well, look, you know, anything can be bad in large amounts. Again, like that example, you can drink enough water and kill yourself. So technically, anyway.
But that's an indicator that she's writing off of some other script.
Right.
Rather than being curious, which is that whole evolve element. I see how the practicality of this can be really easy because you can just remind yourself of the questions and then you're watching, you know, the relationship as it goes in different directions.
Yeah. And that's where it's like, oh, so the alignment is not there. And obviously, right as we're just discovering this, the waiter comes back over and she orders a second drink and I'm now like, ah, shit. And then he's like, oh, do you want some food too? And she's like, yeah, totally.
No.
She opens up the menu and it's like, let's get this. And so now...
I guess you have to split the bill now, huh?
Well, you know, that's the thing. I manned up and paid for it, but I'm like, okay, so this could have been... and I got through it, but...
Why the expectation, speaking of scripts?
Well, that's it, man.
Speaking of scripts, like how it's scripted. And the thing is, this is the line of which where you start realizing, you know, speaking of marriage, because courting and what is it called? Courting? It's funny how the legal signing doesn't happen just all of a sudden. There's the courting, there's the choosing, there's the engagement ring.
Yeah.
There's a first investment.
Right.
So it's all some investment towards something, right?
Transactional.
It's all transactional, really, ultimately. So it's one of those where when it's on the level of... I don't know. Don't get me started.
Well, you know, and
I could just explode right now.
Yeah, well, then that's the thing. It's like modern dating is transactional in many ways, and so
no. My point is that they all are to a degree.
Well, everything is.
But we live in a world where it's not traditional anymore. So this norm, this meme that is a very traditional meme, seems to be really predominantly thriving in the world of fair play because you wanted to get a bubble tea,
right? Yeah.
Like, what about your bubble tea?
Well, and you know. And that's where I realized on reflection of like, again, this constant evolution. And I look back on that date and I was like, I shouldn't have done that.
Right.
I should have stuck to the bubble tea.
That's right. It's like, no. Or just the drink. And then like, I'm not here to eat.
Yeah.
Why are you ordering food? But it's like, if I'm paying, I'd like to lead.
Right.
On the and if I don't deem that we're ready to eat, then it's on you. I'm sorry.
Right. Yeah.
Like she can't force. This is where she's. Anyways, I don't know. Well, as I said, I can go off.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. And so I think the big lesson for me was don't get into that situation in the first place. I.e., right in the very beginning. It's like, well, hey, look, I'm down for bubble tea. Like, let's just, like, why don't we do this? And then, hey, if things are vibing, sure, let's go grab a drink. You know, and it
seems like from that angle, you start questioning whether it's just in for the dinner.
Exactly, and that's kind of what it felt like.
And that brings us to the original idea that female, male, doesn't matter, young or old, doesn't matter. We all have that kind of selfish, corrupt element in us where we're going to just pull in our own direction, especially if we can see that we can cut the corner. People like, and when it's kind of like almost as explicit as this, that's when I need to call Naked Emperor, you know? It's just so weird to me. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's odd.
Yeah.
To have this double standard just in the face.
Totally. Yeah.
Like if we're in a free world, that's where everyone negotiates for themselves. Nobody's paying for nothing.
Right.
But I didn't introduce that world. Like I'm neither the other. I think there needs to be a good balance. And if anyone's gonna earn somebody paying for them, is their presence that important?
Well, I remember going on a date and this woman, like, she was like, I bought a couple drinks, whatever, and she insisted on paying for the food or whatever, and I was like, okay, cool.
That's
like,
the other side of the coin.
And I accepted that, and that was good. Now, what occurred in the end was that it didn't work out. Maybe the polarity of the attraction really wasn't there, and I thought about it after. I was like, was part of the reason the attraction not there because I didn't insist on paying for everything.
It could be, or maybe it could be that her insisting to pay is that she recognized that the polarity wasn't working out for her.
And
she's like, I want to clean the bill. Because accepting it's like asking someone for help. Like taking someone out for a drink is like helping someone move.
Right.
There's giving energy.
Implicit expectations of a reciprocity of some sort.
Right. Or more so that you're wanting to give to the person you're invested.
Right. Yeah.
Rather than let's split it and then we watch. And,
yeah.
Which I like, actually. I like the idea of both wanting to give, but overall watching it together so that there's a sense of fairness. You don't want somebody to be just taken advantage, even subconsciously, and this is the subconscious. If you don't deal with what the acronym deals with,
right,
then you end up in a position, and that's why your children will be angry when you die.
Yeah,
just as because you didn't quite look at it.
Yeah, exactly.
Until you perished.
Sure. Yeah, there's lots of gold diggers. There's lots of people who get in situations that they regret and that they're trying to get out of.
Anything could happen, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the whole sort of dating framework, and it's cool because it can apply to anyone you meet, if you want to assess how much in alignment they are. And and in terms of the healing journey, which was the other sort of aspect of our conversation that I want to make sure we kind of bring to a little bit of a completion. So I'll kind of synopsize
let's do that.
The last part of it here. So basically, once I learned that lesson of this is my shadow, this is this not good enough pattern, I started to really create boundaries. That was a big one. Learning how to say no, how to be discerning about the people in my life, and how to start speaking my truth and being authentic. And by being authentic, it's like, hey, normally I want to go, I'll go to this show that my buddies want to go to, like the DJ or whatever. And now it's like, for me, if I like music and I resonate with it,
go there.
I'll buy a ticket or two. And if someone doesn't end up coming with me and I go by myself, I don't care. Because I'm going to go and I'm going to have a good time. And if you want to come with me because you vibe with that music too, cool, awesome, let's go. We're going to have a great time. But every time that I chose to go to the other thing that they wanted to do when I really wasn't into it, I ended up not having a great time and regretting it. So the resulting pattern was starting to be much more authentic and much more speaking my truth and knowing how to say no. And that in and of itself is incredibly healing because that's taking off that mask.
It's a natural psychological vaccine. We're introducing like a negation and creating something positive.
Yeah, exactly.
It's almost like I remember when I was looking into how energetically atoms create molecules. Okay? They need to energetically go into a higher state of energetic existence collectively as they're fusing in order to get into a lower state of stability as a molecular system.
Yeah.
So in order to get into a better state, it's the investment. And that's why when you were saying earlier that it will never go away. You always have to keep the garden maintained. Just like doing workout, just like eating healthy and all that on a psychological level. I like it. I like this because you didn't get a chance. You told me a little bit about it, but now we just really went through the details.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah.
And when you mentioned that whole workout thing, so this was another aspect of it which kind of fed into my ultimate sort of, realization, which was that, I would go to the gym, but then I would notice that working out would sometimes exacerbate my system. I'd have more bleeding and stuff. And so I actually, for many years, I would try and start up and then I would stop because I'm like, oh man, this is causing, some issues. And then, this is the first time I started working out again, March of 2024, and I didn't stop. And normally I'd stop in the winter, but this time I went all the way through and I've continued on. And I came to a realization, which was like, because some of the bleeding was like occurring a little bit, and I was assessing, okay, well, why is this happening? And I realized that I was clenching like my whole body when I was like, lifting heavy weights or whatever, and I was hold my breath. I was creating all this internal pressure, and it was actually causing hemorrhoids.
Right.
So hemorrhoids will become when you just cause too much pressure, and then it just kind of causes like this.
The cells burst.
Yeah, the cells burst, and so the bleeding. So starting from Crohn's, where it's up here, then when they did the next colonoscopy, it was ulcerative colitis. So the inflammation had gone down a little bit as I was learning and practicing and eating better. Then I did another colonoscopy, and then they re-diagnosed it to ulcerative proctosigmoiditis, which is just the sigmoid and the rectum. So it was only the inflammation had gone from here down to here. So over the years,
coming out.
It was
moving out.
It was decreasing essentially. Yeah.
Oh, wild.
Well, and where it was like most of it was getting less and less.
So
and
what did the doctor say?
Closer and closer to the just the rectum sort of area.
What did the doctor say?
Well, they said that okay, so it seems like you're doing. They're like whatever you're doing, you're doing something right. So keep doing it. I guess.
Never mind the prescriptions.
Yeah, they still
don't worry coming around.
Yeah, they're like if you need
you're
it,
good to go.
Right, exactly. So like whatever you're doing, like keep doing it.
All right.
And then as I realized, it's like okay, now as I'm coming to the tail end of like this sort of healing journey and really getting it, I realized that some of the last bleeding that was occurring was literally just me creating hemorrhoids because I was internally pressurizing myself.
But otherwise, the majority of it, you've kind of like...
Otherwise, it was pretty much...
It's kind of wild to think that the act of creating boundaries, again, would be a pressure of release, a point of release.
Yeah.
Within the system.
Yeah.
Because the system can relax. Mm-hmm. That is what I think is that the flower that opens up too much will be beaten by the wind.
Yeah.
But once you close in a little bit,
open,
so you have to do,
close.
and that's that yin and yang, back and forth.
Yeah, knowing when to take in, when to accept, and when to say no, and when to push away. Whether it's relationships, whether it's people in your life, it's always that ebb and flow and that back and forth, and so the real key was when I realized that with the hemorrhoids and things, then I was like, okay, so this is just me creating tension, and I realized that the way that I had termed like the amount of bleeding that I was experiencing throughout the years, I would journal, right, and I would create 0 to 10, so 10 being no blood at all, like perfect, exactly the way I wanted to look. 0 being toilet full of blood, nothing like I wanted to look at all, right? And so I would rate it, and I would journal this, and I would see, okay, what are they? And I've done this for years, and then I would relate it to, okay, well, what's going on in my life, and what could be causing this? And so,
were you stopping eating certain things as well?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I went on a whole elimination diet. Where
a lot of people who are just struggling with cancers find that as soon as they stop eating sugar, their pains go away.
Yeah. So sugar
is such a big one. Actually.
Yeah, sugar, dairy, hot sauce, all this kind of stuff.
Hot sauce.
Yeah. But so...
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, so that was a part of the healing journey, was doing elimination diets and then figuring out what to integrate. And so I've done a great job of that. I have a really good base now. But what the interesting thing I'm discovering now is that as I get all the other things in proper alignment, then I can re-expand what I eat. And it's not affecting me the way it used to, because now I have... You have a stronger system. I have a stronger system because it's holistic. Healing is holistic. So yes, diet is a part of it, but it's not the whole thing. That's how I always have viewed in terms of the first standard deviation. I always think of it in the, good gut bacteria, 68%. That means that if there's 20% coming in, the 68% is a strong enough of an entity to hold itself. Yeah. Whereas opposite was true when it was 20% health, and the rest was just inflamed. Then one shitty thing is going to destroy the whole system, and a whole bunch of good stuff is not going to help. So what you've done is that throughout the years, you've slowly, very good, built up the. I can say I've done that with my core and with my attending to just muscular strength in the last 5 to 6 years, especially. I'd say more. Yeah. I'm pretty pleased. Yeah. Because these habits are so important, both in the mind and the body. Yeah. Yeah. And it's a work that takes time. It takes years, and that's one of the another thing I realized is that it's perseverance with like the healing journey. As long as you never give up, you know that there's a solution. That there's some way that you don't have to take the easy path in the pills or the shot or anything. Like, you can find a way to heal if you have the will to just keep exploring, keep journaling, keep self-assessing, keep asking yourself, like the spirit of self-inquiry, why is this occurring? And so the final piece was that, oh, so this is me clenching, and And I look back and I realize that I partially subconsciously liked the fact that I had the bleeding because I'm on a spiritual path, and what it would do is whenever I was off of my spiritual path, I would have bleeding.
That's your reminder. It's your petty tyrant.
So what I called it was a barometer.
Very good.
And
that's my hip.
Yeah, so it's like, there was a part of me that actually wanted the illness, which is when you start to really come to some major spiritual realizations. You realize there are no victims, and we create our own reality. And so for me, there was a part of me that appreciated that, because that was my barometer that taught me whether I was on my path or not, whether I was doing things correctly or not, whether I was being authentic or whether I was a people pleaser. When I was people pleasing, when I was eating shitty food, when I was not exercising, when I was stressing or internalizing, when I was clenching, all of these things were the barometer that would show me, okay, how much am I bleeding or not bleeding?
You were calibrated wrongly.
Yeah, exactly. And the great revelation was when I realized that it was this internal clenching, which was a huge part of it. I actually looked up the word barometer because I was thinking of it more as a compass. But when I looked up the definition of it, it actually measures pressure or internal pressure.
Yeah.
And that was an example of almost like this subconscious knowing. There's like this intuitive sort of understanding that I didn't even know, but because I was on this healing path, and the perfect word barometer came into play. And so how this played out was, I would go and visit my mentor every so often. He's a brilliant teacher, but part of his teaching is very much a lot of my philosophies, which are like, take the hard path, don't take the easy path, the pills, but like training is everything. Everything is training. So like put yourself in challenging and difficult positions because that strengthens you. And so, you'll be able to withstand difficult situations. And so he would create that. He would almost call it like a dojo that we would enter into. It was an energetic dojo where he would find your triggers and, whether it's a word or whether it's, an energy. And if you respond to it, then it shows that trigger is still in there, and therefore, for example, like, he might say, oh, you're fat, And then if you have an emotional response to that, that means there's something in you that believes you're
holding
fat.
You there.
Right, because if I say you're fat, you're not fat, then that doesn't hold any weight.
Or even if you were, but it didn't really.
Yeah, or
it wasn't emotionally tied to a negative connotation.
Exactly. So part of what his methodology is poking for triggers, and then when that comes up, then you actually have the opportunity to then say, oh, where is that coming from? What's that belief in myself that believes that I'm fat, and where did that come from? And why am I having an emotional response now? So it gives you the opportunity to really assess what's actually going on. Again, shadow self, shadow work, etc. And so one of the last times I went up there, like this is like one of the things that he does is he's always like intuitively, perfectly saying the things that would tend to trigger a person, right? And so the last time I went up, I was like, I'm just going to stay loose. I'm going to relax. I'm going to like my sphincter relaxed, my energy relaxed. And it was even something that he taught me in the very beginning. He's like, you're too tense. And so like when you go to the bathroom, you have really good bowel movement. That's when you're loose and your sphincter is open and it all just kind of falls out smoothly, nice, even, versus people who kind of clench and like break it off and kind of like there's this clenchy energy. And so that's like this resistance, that's this triggering sort of thing. It all feeds in. So when I went up there, I was like, I'm going to practice, all of these times we've met and all these lessons we've had. Like this time I'm really going to practice just staying completely loose the entire time. And I was having a little bit of health issues, just a little bit of like bleeding and stuff. And I was like, and I went up there and I stayed loose, and literally the next day, my health was back up. And even though I was I was eating stuff I normally wouldn't have eaten, etc., and I realized, oh, this is actually, it's because I'm staying loose that my health it's not even about the food.
You're feeling it in the body of how to hold your body.
Exactly. And I became very conscious. And
that's with me with the posture as a tall person. Like I have to constantly, especially when I perform, because once I start focusing on the musical material or whatnot, then the whatever postural habits that I might have had go out. So sometimes when I do workouts, it's mostly just standing up straight and doing postural stuff.
Right.
Just to get the body used to that.
Yeah, exactly. And you have to. It's an effort.
It's a procedural memory.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The more you do it, the more you kind of get
the
used
body
to
learns it.
Exactly.
Then later you don't have to think about it.
Exactly.
But you have to think about it to train it.
Yes. And so that's what it was. It was this concentrated like week or whatever that I was there, and the entire time we were staying up late, we're getting up early. I wasn't doing my yoga. I wasn't doing the gym. I was eating all this stuff I don't normally eat. Literally list all the things that throughout the years I determined were the things that would cause the bleeding and stuff.
So that was on top.
And so, so all of that was occurring, but just by staying loose and relaxed and not resisting, my health was perfect, like 10s the entire time. When I went up there, I was doing all the things I thought I was supposed to do and they weren't 10s. So it's like, so all of those things were important. They were like a foundational sort of base, right? But what was the one thing that tied them all together was this resistance to life, this clenching, this, and so when I just relaxed into this state of like acceptance and flow, and just no matter what was occurring, no matter how provocative he was being, no matter how challenging whatever, this pizza, and I don't eat cheese and I don't eat bread, but I'm eating this pizza anyway, and having this drink alcohol.
It's a recipe for disaster.
All of those things which normally would destroy my gut in the past, no effect at all whatsoever. And that's when it really clicked for me. It's like, this is what has been going on the whole time, was that I've been clenching, I've been resisting to life, and maybe that was due to that whole reaction of leaving, being between my mother and my father.
And possibly before, like primal scream all the way, baby. You remember that book? I don't know if you ever...
No.
The Primal Scream is about finding the pains that you don't even remember. It's not even in conscious memory or recollection.
Right.
It's when you were just born.
Well, there's the whole Freudian, there's like the anal stage, and there's all the stages, right? And so it's like, who knows what happened? Maybe it was because I got like vaccinated when I was a baby,
or something.
Who knows? It could be dropped, right?
Or neglected in some domains, or hurt by some circumstance.
Right.
It could be anything.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like making a cake. Who is it? One of these people who said is that, it's not just your genetic makeup. It's also the process of it being built.
Yeah.
So even the epigenetics. The epigenetics will instigate whatever they need to instigate. Yeah. But once the building process starts going, the environment around is affecting it. Yeah. So the building process will change as well. Right? Yeah. So that needs to be attended to as well, the actual process.
Sure. And maybe that specific mechanism will be revealed at some point, because the thing with the whole evolutionary concept of growth and healing is that it never ends. And
it doesn't. That's the point. You always have to work on it.
Yeah, and it's not that I always only have 10s ever from now on, but if I do slip back, maybe it's a 9.5, a 9, and then I'm like, and then that's again, it's my barometer, so I still have that there. It's like, and I had like a tiny little slip back from like a stretch of 10s when I had that food that woman ordered on that date. Because she ordered this shit, which was like, it was these dumplings in this like Thai sauce or whatever.
Oh, that's the last nail in the coffin.
Yeah. And I took a spoonful. I'm like, all right, I guess we're eating this food. And it was the most hot, spicy freaking thing ever. Dude. And I just swallowed it out of reflex. And I just felt it going down as I'm also drinking alcohol. And I'm like, oh man. And I'm also not liking the way the date is going. So there's all of these things that occurred, and then the next day it was like,
reminder.
Yeah, totally.
A reminder.
But the thing was, the realization occurred, and normally there would be... Yeah, right? And then, but that's the perfect encapsulation of all the lessons, because what did I do? I wasn't authentic to myself. I was a people pleaser. I went on some date that I wasn't even really feeling that much like going on, and I wasn't even that attracted to her physically anyway. And I wanted bubble tea, but I didn't get bubble tea. I went with her to get the drinks. I let her order the food, and I paid for all of it. So all of these things,
right?
And then I ate the food that I didn't even want, and it gave.
And that is just one episode in your life.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and there could be so many different things that we all do.
Oh.
Yeah, it's important to monitor.
And that's it. And the people who are that if you're someone who wants to like grow and who wants to continually evolve and be better, then those are the types of people that you want, are people who are reflective.
Yes.
On
otherwise it will hold you back.
Yeah.
Very easily.
Exactly.
That's the danger in it.
Yeah.
And then those are, well, I don't know. It seems like sometimes a bit diamonds in the rough, considering the norms. The world of normality is by and large liked by many people.
Yeah.
So people who are
the easy path.
The easy path is so yeah.
And because reflecting is hard because it's uncomfortable. Because you see,
and you can say that it's a good, you know, kind of let's say it. I don't want to use the word mission. Since we already covered the movie, but the goal in life to open up this in people and make that majority a bit smaller in terms of how much they're just following the prescriptions.
Sure.
And then ask themselves. Yeah. So even if there is a date or a hangout, there's a few questions that have, you know, there's a few inceptions that have been done to help have them just learn about themselves a bit more, if nothing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the dual
it's a
benefit of it.
Double benefit, yeah. So that's your positive gut biome in society, where you're like, as you meet people, you're opening them up.
Yeah.
You're helping them just explore themselves outside of just whatever's the prescription they get spoon-fed, you know?
Yeah, and that's like where you ask a question like, or like, again, that abstract, like, what's the difference between awake and woke? That's a good sort of question to ask someone because, you know, there's this whole wokeism sort of aspect of our culture.
Yeah, woke is an established at this point, corporately established ideology.
Yeah. So we're starting to understand what that is, and then that versus awake, which is those people who are doing the work. Doing the shadow work.
It's a completely different field.
Self-sovereignty, like understanding what's really going on, awake, aware of what's actually happening versus the wokeism, which is more virtue signaling and, you know, this cancel culture.
And it's such a sadness to me that the world of the fighting for the minority group's rights would have arisen as an awake element.
Yeah.
And then the wokeness becomes, once it becomes incorporated.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Well, and things get subverted. They get changed. Again, that Machiavellian sort of way of, like, even the language. George Carlin talks all about our language and what words mean. And, you know, stay woke used to mean stay awake. Like, as in be...
I never even knew. I've always only known woke as once it became... And then it seemed like a very appropriate term.
Right.
But, I mean, wherever it comes from, that's the word that's used. We can change the word, but it's the system that is outlined. And yeah, I agree. The awakening can come... The way I would see it is that an awakening can come about and happen within the woke world. It can happen within a Christian world. It can happen within a Muslim world. Awakening can happen within your family structure world.
Absolutely.
It can happen. So that's all there is to it. And then beware, I would say, with all this for me, beware of any of your awakenings of becoming captured.
Right.
Because then they become something else.
Yeah.
Because it's the people underneath who are negotiating, the humans, alive humans who are functioning are the ones that ultimately create whatever's creating, rather than whatever structures we all end up building on top that tries to do things. So we have to be aware of the direct.
And have those boundaries, you know, as much as we want to create, you know, a movement or something that we resonate with, you know, like even building a community or something like that. It's like, you don't just admit anyone in. Again, it's not being overly agreeable. It's like having those boundaries and realizing, okay, that's not the type of person that I want to just, you know, because I understand the chaos that they're going to bring into a normally harmonious system. They're going to bring disharmony, and I've sussed that out maybe through these questions or through observation.
Oh, and it's harmony to your world.
Yeah.
This is where the non-relativism really shines. Right.
They might be harmonious to some
other world, and you don't want to waste the time.
Exactly.
Yeah, very good. I love it. All right. Any conclusions? Thanks. This has been just excellent in terms of like riding the waves of what we plan to do.
Totally. Yeah. I think we had a good structure and framework, and then we kind of let it flow in all these different directions, but it all kind of tied back in.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that in. Like for me, I've put it into the hands of the guests as they come to lead it. It was perfect. But mainly, one of my conclusions, and then you can say something, and we can call it a day. I didn't even need to bring this up because with you it seems very natural, and that is that a lot of times knowledge, as we concluded earlier, really starts from a baseline where it branches very quickly in gazillion exponentially different ways. And one of the hardest things in communication generally that I find between ourselves, within ourselves, with people, is to stay not just on the same log, but rather on the same branch, but like stay on the leaf. Like if someone makes a point, sometimes, and that happens with me, where in order to get to the leaf, I need to set the definitions and work towards you need to define the branches and all that to get to the leaf. The tree needs to grow to get to the leaf. But I find a lot of times there's a lot of jumping that naturally through brainstorming and different ways of wanting to explore things that happen where the threads just become very messy very easily. And I've really wanted to stay on. And so what you've done is to set a very good branch full of leaves. Yeah. And then we slowly worked through it. And I like that, maintaining the while experiment by being for liberty. Yeah. Good balance of order and liberty tonight.
Exactly.
Very well composed.
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, thank you so much. And that's it. This was super fun. And I think that's what occurs like when we do our self-work and when we're on a path of like growth and evolution, and like for myself working on that authenticity, that's where I'm at now. Like I don't even need like a girlfriend at this point in time. Like I'm happy just being with myself, just working on my business, just so
much in life.
And I believe that's the true place of abundance from which that perfect partner can come, because it's not coming from a needy place. It's not coming from a people-pleasing place. Now I'm just being me. I'm just being authentic. Whether, I'm meeting someone on the street who expresses a different opinion than me, like some guy on the beach, and he's like talking about how great cocaine was, and I was like, dude, man, that is the worst drug, dude. It just inflates your ego. It's so addictive, and you have to snort it, and you get the drips. I've tried a handful of times. It's terrible, dude. But my past self would have been like, teach their own, blah blah blah.
Oh, I see.
But now, see, my thing is that I'm speaking from a more authentic place, and it's not always what you say, but how you say it. So I can still say it in a joking way, like I just expressed it, and it's not going to get upset. And we still had a nice conversation in the end, but you can do it in a way where you still speak your truth and still be authentic without offending everyone you meet. And there's a skill to doing that.
Yeah, you're not nice, but at the same time, as you learn to do boundaries, you don't want to go into attack modes either. Yeah. And that's where people can get lost. It's very important to maintain that.
Yeah, so there's a delicate balance there, but it comes, and there's skill to it, but a big important part of that process is finding our own authenticity, who we really are by doing this self-work, and then just being comfortable enough to just live in it and relax into it. Loosen the sphincter, relax into who you really are, and watch the universe just change around you, and all of a sudden, it's like, Muhammad didn't go to the mountain came to Muhammad. Everything that you want, that you've been working towards in your life, just start to come to you because you're resonating on that frequency now of who you're really actually supposed to be. And that's the whole point of it all anyway.
I love it. Hey.
All right, brother.
Thanks so much. We should do this again.
Absolutely.
Yeah, love it.
Totally.
Love it. Until next time. Stay real out there.